I wanted to thank Communications and everybody who was here last night, and especially our Vice Chair for chairing the meeting. Good job last night. I thought that was really good and got a lot of good feedback from our residents. So, but thank you, Communications, for stepping up and doing that yesterday and being at the ready this morning. So, all right, we've got Solid Waste, Care About Me, Office of Human Rights. We're going to move the Clearwater parcel disposition update to Tuesday.
Correct.
And then we'll have the agenda briefing after that. So let's get started with the Solid Waste Department.
Here comes.
Hello there, Mr. Sacco. Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. Paul Sacco, the Director of Solid Waste Department. With me this morning is Cassie Hartman. She's our Manager of Business and Financial Services.
Lift that up to your, lift this up closer to you if you don't mind. It's just, I'm not picking you up.
Sorry about that.
Oh, there you go.
So today we're going to be providing you updates on the power brokering sales for power generated by the waste energy facility, give you an update on the fiscal year 27 tip fee recommendation, as well as the Lealman MSBU solid waste collection rate recommendation. So first up with power brokering. Power brokering began in January 1st, 2025. That began after the expiration of our power purchase agreement in December of 2024. Any power that is not brokered on the open market is actually what we say dumped to the local utility, which is either Duke Energy or the Seminole Electric Cooperative. Rainbow Energy is our power broker. And the way that they are paid is they get 10% of any revenue that's generated on the open market, but it has to be the revenue that's generated above the power that we would dump to Duke. So they're motivated to sell power at a rate that's greater than what we can just sell to Duke as an as-available rate. Apex Power is our power consultant. They help us with reconciliations with invoices that are coming from Rainbow Energy and the hourly charges that are coming every month associated with that. And they also help us identify possible other power purchase agreement or power purchase opportunities with other utilities in the state or even outside the state. So this chart shows the existing markets and rates. This chart was shared with you last year as well. You can see the green line at the top that represents the power sale market and what is being brokered on the open market. The green line there. So as you can see, through 2028, it still shows that power brokering remains the best option for us to generate the maximum amount of revenue for power that's generated. In 2028, that begins to shift a little bit. You see a break even, and then in the out years, it appears that Duke's as available rates, which may either be just selling our power to Duke outright or maybe entering into a power purchase agreement at that point in time, may be the best opportunity. So staff will continue to monitor and we'll assess and we'll react and bring recommendations back to the board as we get into the out years. But we always have that backstop of a power purchase agreement with Duke if we feel like we need that.
Paul, what's creating that spike in 20? I'm sorry, maybe I missed that.
No, usually every utility has different operating components for demand and what they generate, and then they also have their plans. They issue their 10-year plans every year that talk about how much solar they're going to do. They can have plants that are expiring. So in this case, I don't know specifically what's happening inside of Duke, but usually plants are expiring and they're generating different capacities, or with a spike like that where they're saying they want to pay more for power, they may be in a dip where they don't have enough power available and they may have to buy more. So they may be predicting, or that's what I think is being forecasted here.
And what drives that is the open market
Yes,
for power. Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you.
And everything here that you see is all driven on the natural gas market. So, what I understand, and I know enough to be dangerous, is in the natural gas market, for every dollar of natural gas per therm that increases results in about $5 per megawatt that we can generate and put on the open market for retail. So natural gas prices have been suppressed for a very long time, and they continue to be. We're not seeing much change in that over the next 10 years when I was talking to the power consultant. So unless there's changes that are happening within the utilities that we are connected to or operate, with shifts like that, it may or may not drive what we see on the open market as far as what we can sell. But this is the best that we know at this point in time. So just a little comparison for what was forecasted last year and what the actuals that we received. So we were forecasting 480 megawatt hours to be generated at the waste energy facility. That's based on, on the tons that we believe that are coming in, the processing rates in which we experience with the facility, taking into account the scheduled outages that need to take place. So 480 is kind of our baseline. Last year, we achieved a little less than 340, and almost all of that was attributed to a vibration that we had in our turbine generator number 1, and then turbine generator number 1 was actually removed for service for the entire month of December for a major overhaul. So we weren't we weren't able to achieve the 480,000 that we were hoping to achieve. Now, moving down to the dollars per megawatt, this would be net now. After we were selling our power in the open market and we paid Rainbow, we paid for our transmission to get the power, outside of the Duke territory, we were forecasting $27 a megawatt. We actually achieved something, greater than almost $37 a megawatt. So it was a good year as far as a rate goes. When you look at the forecasts with the net revenue that we were looking at 12.9 million, we came in at 12.8, and that was really because of that difference in the increase of the actual revenues that we were able to achieve for that higher rate. If turbine generator was available like it was supposed to be through the vibration and the event, we were looking at something we were going to be on the path to achieve something more in line of about 18 million. So to me, this validates that power brokering is still the best option for us, and we'll continue along that path.
And all that just goes back into our capital fund for
It goes back into the solid waste reserve that we'll use for operation capital and whatnot.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I just.
Commissioner
that-
Scheer?
The 12 million that goes back into reserves for
Yeah.
the power plant
It's
every year?
It goes into the solid waste reserve. So they're an enterprise fund. So whatever they spend and whatever revenue is all's within one bucket. You can't spend it outside of that use.
Too bad.
Yeah. I just wanted to clarify.
Every year,
It's-
13 million just goes into reserves and we don't.
Well, no. It's used for their long term, and they have post-closure requirements and everything, so they have very large reserves that they have to have for the landfill, et cetera, and stuff, and the replacement of the plant and everything like that. But I just wanted to remind the board, it is an enterprise fund, and so it is restricted in the use of the funds.
Yeah, well, it's a discussion about the reserves, though. I think even though we know it's,
Right.
targeted for that, would be interesting to have a feel for what that is.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah. Yeah, okay.
I just had, as long as we're doing questions on this, Rainbow, do you have to have a license to be a broker for power?
That's a good question. I don't know that. I would have to find that out. I know there's not many domestically in the U.S. It's usually a talent that comes from that industry, but I don't know that. I'd have to find that out, sir.
One other question real quick. That if we chose to go direct to Duke sometime, would that require a broker?
No.
So the 10%, we wouldn't have to pay 10% direct to Duke.
Correct.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Anybody else? Go ahead, Paul.
Okay. That's a good segue, actually, into the next part when we're looking at the tip fee recommendation for 2027. So I just want to take a minute, just as a review. As I mentioned, the 30-year power purchase agreement with Duke Energy expired in December of 2024. That was a 30-year agreement that was heavily benefited Pinellas County. I don't think at the time when it was generated, a lot was known about waste energy. I mean, I can say that for sure. We were one of the first out of the gate, Pinellas was, and then others kind of followed. But it was so heavily slanted towards us that the last year of payments that we received from that power purchase agreement for capacity payment alone, I think was in excess of $50 or $60 million. So when that agreement expired, that represented about 55% of the revenue that was coming into the solid waste fund for operations and whatnot. And as Barry said, since we are an enterprise fund, 55% is a giant hole for us to bridge. So power brokering, as you can see, we were on target to generate maybe about $18 million on power sales alone. The standard power purchase agreement that we were being offered by Duke was somewhere in the neighborhood of 12. So we went from a very high lucrative power purchase agreement to almost to the floor, and we're just trying to gain back a little bit more for maximizing the power of the 18 million. The other major source of revenue coming into the fund is the tipping fees. And our tipping fees really were not raised for 25 years. We didn't start increasing the tipping fees until 2019. The department spent several years trying to renegotiate the power purchase with Duke Energy and wasn't able to do that. So realizing that the standard offer was going to be the only thing we needed to do, we knew we were coming up to a cliff in 2024. So we put a strategy together looking at the rate studies and coming back to the board. And at that time, the board adopted the strategy that we would start increasing tipping fees at a steady rate over a long period of time instead of waiting until we got to 2024 and doing a gigantic stair-step increase and then other continued increases on top of that. So from 2019 to date, the increases have been around 6%, 6.5%. Last year, the board adopted a 3 year-over-year increase beginning in 26 at 8% for 8%, 26, 27, and 28. The recommendation stands as you'll go through, or we go through the slides today at that 8%. But I just wanted the board to kind of understand the background and the history is the trajectory that we're on. We need to continue to increase tipping fees because our operating expenses are higher than what we would see with the revenues coming in. And the operating expenses aren't just solid waste department. The operating expenses is the processing fees that we receive for putting trash through the waste energy facility, the fees that we need to landfill those things that are not going through the waste energy facility. They're two of the biggest contracts that the county owns, and together they're probably $40, $45 million a year to operate those two contracts. So you're going to see our break-even point if we continue to operate or continue to increase our fees is around 2038. And, you know, I'll talk a little bit more as we get there, but that's a little bit of the background on where we are. So why it looks great that we're receiving these revenues for power, that's only a portion of what's needed to make the fund whole as far as operating year over year. We're actually going to be taking money out of reserves to bridge that gap until we reach that break-even point. So that's the plan. That's the trajectory that we're on right now as a department. And I'm just going to go through that.
So the factors into that increase are not just the Duke Energy contract that expired.
No.
That was the one that we were concerned about clearly, but even this year's looked like we hit what we were getting from them anyway. I mean, this past year.
Well, just for what they would have offered for a standard offer. When you look at where we were at 50 or 60 million.
Oh, you're talking about the old contract.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
So we're looking to bridge that $40 million in revenue over time. And the only way to do that is to increase our tipping fees because it's the only other place we can go. Unless there's some market radical change in the market where we're getting, you know, a lot more money for our electric power, which we don't see because gas isn't really moving or doing anything.
So that intersection point that you're talking about, we're going to see that when? When are we going to?
In a few slides.
Yep.
But Commissioners, I wanted just to, you know, kind of back up just so you have the history on that. We tried for years to renegotiate that the Duke contract, and they really had no incentive to renegotiate because it's a closed system. I can't buy power outside of that, and we can't even take the power that we use or that we generate and send it over to operate our wastewater treatment systems. They can only use it on that site, on the way the regulatory structure works. So they were willing to negotiate until they were successful in Tallahassee. And once they were successful in Tallahassee, then there was no more negotiation because they didn't need us. So just so you understand that they have a closed system, and you cannot operate outside of that. That's the reason we've had to kind of restructure this, and that's all occurred in the last 5, 6 years.
Can we send them power when we want to and turn it off
Well,
when we
that's the
want to?
brokering that he's doing, okay? And because we proposed a lot of different options, but they weren't interested because they have a closed system. You know, we went through that for years, and we met with their senior executives from North Carolina and everyone trying to find a solution on this.
So unless we have a power purchase agreement, and even in the power purchase agreement, what you sell your power at varies because they treat us as a utility. So they're buying and selling power and treating us like they would buy and sell power from any other utility, which is really low. Then they turn around and sell it at a retail rate that's really high. So we don't get that benefit. We're never allowed to sell our power retail on the market. We can only sell to other utilities. So we can always dump our power to Duke because they're our local utility. We're connected to them. If we want to send our power out of state, we have to send it through Duke Energy's, region or their zone. We have to pay them for the use of their transmission. So we may sell our power at $40 a megawatt hour, but we usually have to pay them $8 a megawatt hour as a fee to get the power out of state. So it's the way that they have it set. Like Barry said, it's a closed system. We're fortunate enough that we only have to go through one utility to get outside of Florida. People in South Florida have to go through two, at least, to get out. So it puts pressure on what we can sell outside. And if for some reason, the sale is not, attractive enough because of the transmission, then we end up selling selling our power to Duke anyway. So with that, as I mentioned, the board approved a 3 year-over-year increase of 8% for fiscal years 26 through 28. The annual rate study was performed by Raftellus, and it was actually presented to the Solid Waste Technical Management Committee, your advisory committee, and that was brought back for your review. Each year, the rate study considers operating revenues as well as expenditures, the capital improvement plan, any planned operational changes. They look at industry indices, as well as landfill closure and long-term maintenance for a closed landfill. All those components have to be considered, and a lot of those components remain in our reserve because some of them are things that have to happen, in the future, and we need time to build the reserves up to make sure there's money there when these things actually are required to be asked to be performed. So the key changes since last year that we're bringing forward, our municipal waste volumes that are coming to our facility remain high. They're almost 15 to 20%, month over month, what we've seen before the storms in 2024. And we expect that we're going to continue to see those increases because people now are just getting permits and they're starting to do their construction. And we're seeing a lot of construction material as well as materials that are being pulled actually from the inside of your houses. So why it's not defined storm debris like you would see right after the storm, it is storm debris in a sense that it's delayed because people are still doing construction and we're seeing those volumes. We have a new waste energy operator that took over the facility in January 1st. The processing rate of the old facility operator was $40 $40 a ton that was being put through the facility. The new rate came back at $34.25, I think is the rate. We were budgeting or forecasting at 32, so we didn't get as low. So while we did achieve, a $5 plus increase, it was still a couple dollars more than what we were hoping for as we were going through negotiations. The solid waste reserve investment income was a little bit higher than we were forecasting last year. Again, things that we don't have any control over with that. No significant changes in our capital costs that were predicted last year. And some of these key changes actually lowered our out-year rate increases in the 30-year plan and actually pulled forward the break-even point to fiscal year 38. When we first got on the trajectory of doing these increases, that break-even point, I think, was at fiscal year 40 or fiscal year 41. So we are making a little bit of gain with that, and I think we're benefiting from additional monies coming in with the additional volumes that we weren't really prepared to, but the other things kind of remain the same from what we saw last year. Okay. So this goes and actually will show you where our break-even point is. You can see that 2038 are where the lines kind of reduce down. So the dark green represents the funds coming from our tipping fees. The light green is funds that we come from other revenues. Other revenues are your electricity sales, metal recovery revenue, and also the interest income that we would see on our reserves. And then the orange represents the amount that's actually being pulled from the solid waste reserves to bridge the gap between our operating revenues and expenditures until we get out to that break-even point. So I just wanted to pause there and make sure you understood and you're good with that. Okay. Next up is the key assumptions for capital. So you can see these are all over the map. I'm proud of our team. I'm proud of the previous operator of the waste energy facility, as well as the new operator coming in. We're looking at almost $480 million of proposed CIP projects over the next CIP period, which is 36 through 37. Most of that is with waste energy. And you say that's a lot of money. It is a lot of money. But when you look at the mission to reduce what's going to the landfill, because we'll never get another landfill, waste energy reduces that waste by 90%. There's no other technology, there's no other process, there's no other silver bullet that's going to do that other than waste energy. The board has invested $240 million to refurbish that facility from 2016 to 2022 to bring it and extend that life another 20, 25 years. This money is for things that are just going to happen in the plant during that period of time, where you're going to have tube leaks, known tow room work, and other systems and components in that system that are planned. So this is all planned work that we think we're going to be doing over that period. In the out years, we may be looking at a bulky waste facility where we would actually shred large materials that come into the facility that don't fit into the waste energy facility. Right now, all those materials are being landfilled, like boats, couches, mattresses, things like that. We're hoping that we'll be able to divert some of the materials that are going to waste energy to make room for these shredded materials that would be able to come in at a later date. We're in the process of refreshing our 30-year master plan that was adopted in 2020. And before we get into these major spend elements, we want to make sure that we're still doing the right thing. The environment hasn't changed. Technology hasn't changed. But you're talking about generational type investments. We just want to make sure we're on solid ground before we come back to you and recommend pulling the trigger on some of these projects. The enhanced metals recovery project, that's a $20 million project. That's something we would put on the back end of the facility, and this is actually a payback. I've talked about this to the board before. We know that we're actually burning gold in the backyard. There are fines in the materials for the non-ferrous metals that we have piloted and have demonstrated that we're putting about $1.5 to $2 million of fines that we cannot get out through the regular, metals extraction of waste energy, and they're just being buried with the ash in the landfill. So by putting this enhanced metals recovery system at the back end, $2.5 million a year in recovery. We have the new operator sees that. They want to contribute 50% of that $20 million because they see that this is going to be a revenue generator for them, because we actually split the revenues of the metals that are recovered from the facility. So this would be a joint venture between us and the operator. I think the rest of that speaks for itself. The only other thing that I would say is the bars in the out years that look like a steady stream, that is Raftellus plugging in capital costs that are kind of our average over legacy spends, and then putting an annual escalator on that. We come back to you every year with an update, so you're going to see these bars kind of move, but we needed to plug in a capital number for the 30 years to make sure that we're getting a good number to come back and recommend a rate, when we're looking at the fund over a long period of time. So Questions on anything with the capital?
Again, we're building the reserves, looks like up in 27, 28. That's with the increased tipping fees help us get there.
Yes.
And then, of course, we're spending it down too, and then, yeah.
And, we have reserves now that are helping us with that. So we're not having to borrow, we're not anything like that. We do have reserves to make this happen. And we're fortunate enough that we have the reserves to bridge the gap to support, the strategy of increasing those fees over a long period of time.
Are these the reserves that we sometimes use for interdepartmental
Yes.
capital loans?
That's correct. So, and we'll come back and have a specific conversation about their reserve levels, but they do have like post-closure requirements, so they have to set aside a certain amount for things like that, but we can outline that. I also wanted just to highlight, you saw in its first chart a rate stabilization fund. So when we originally looked and we were losing the Duke amount, we took one-time money, and so it was a planned expenditure. That way you didn't see spikes in the increases. We would have had to, increase it a lot over, and so that was a planned drawdown of that one-time money to be able to get us out to that point where we're going to break even and stuff. So it was all of those things, but this is the fund that if we, rather than go to a bank and borrow money, we could borrow money from here, like if we had a hurricane or something like that that we couldn't cover up through our own reserves, we could take a loan out, pay it back with interest because this is a enterprise fund, but that's how we would do an interfund loan. And we've done that, we did that before I got here. You did that with some capital projects in anticipation of the penny. After the penny had passed in 2017, I think you did a loan, either that or the previous one. It was
the previous
time.
one.
Yeah. And so you took a loan out, advancing some capital projects until the penny started coming in, and then you paid it back. So it is a good stabilization fund for us.
Commissioner Scheer?
What's in the fund and who manages it?
Say again?
What dollar amount is in the fund and who manages it?
I don't know that off the top of my head. Paul might.
We're over 400 million in the fund, and the clerk of the court actually manages all the funds as far as where monies go for interest and whatnot.
But we'll come back and show you, because what we'd have to show you is what we're required to have versus what we have and the drawdowns and things like that. We'll prepare a presentation and have that discussion. Okay.
Thanks.
Okay?
Go ahead.
Okay. So just finding a recommendation coming again from this year's study. So, as mentioned, minimal changes since last year. Therefore, the recommendation is for the board to adopt and remain the course with the 8% for FY27. That FY27 increase you can see there represents a $4.71 increase per ton that's coming across the scales at the facility. So we estimate that a single-family home in Pinellas generates about 1 ton of waste per year. So that would be $4.71 annually. The increase they would see is about 39 cents per month. Now, you have the municipalities that are doing the collections and the transports and all that. The disposal is part of, their components of what they're charging the public. We don't really control that other than what we see in Lealman, where we actually do the franchise collection. But that really is the impact from a disposal standpoint from the facility. That would be the impact per year at that new rate of $63.57. And then the next chart is kind of put this in perspective when you're looking at tipping fees across the state. So you'll see those with waste energy facilities are denoted on top of the bars. You can see the existing fee for Pinellas County in the first light blue bar, the new proposed tipping fee rate for Pinellas County in the second blue bar. The state average is, 82, almost 80, a little over $82 a ton. So you see Pinellas remains below the average. We've always been below the average. And then you can see how the other waste energy facility municipalities stack up. And Lee County, Palm Beach County, in addition to tip fees, they also charge a non-ad valorem assessment for collection and disposal that goes into the component that you see there, on the bar chart.
Yeah, so always being below the average is probably because of that rate we had,
Correct.
that
We're
beat our
lagging.
PO. So now we're catching up. In a few years, we'll probably be more towards the mean.
I don't know, Commissioner, because I think everybody's moving at the same time. You know, I think we've had the benefit of that, and I think we'll get to remain near the back of the pack. I'm not saying we won't increase, we will, but I think everybody's moving up because we've seen this shift over the last 6 years, almost the same as ours. I mean, the cost of business out there, whether you're a waste energy, landfill, you know, the price of doing business in this industry is the same for all. So wherever you are on the chart, you're just going to kind of move up with whatever that is.
You're saying our increase is 8% is more than just, and I think I mentioned that a second ago, it's more than just the,
Well, I think the 8% for this year is a little bit more than what we've had in the past. I think we're going to see that dip. I don't think we'll be at 8% again. I think we're going to be probably more in the 6% when we go through these studies, you know, maybe in 28 or 29. I don't know exactly what the others are seeing, but I believe it's about the same. I think it's in that 6 to 8% bar is my understanding.
I'm understanding that, you know, those solid waste rates in cities are significantly increasing.
Yep.
I mean, it all flows through. It's not just the tipping fees, but
Correct. I mean, when you're looking at labor, your transportation, you know, the collection, you know, with the fuel prices going up, I mean, all those are components to what's being charged to the citizen for collection at their home. So that's it on the tipping fee update. I don't know if there's any more questions with that. Before I transition into bringing Cassie up to talk about the Lealman, I do want to let you, you know, I give you a little bit of background here as well. We were here last year and we were recommending a 2-year increase for 26 and 27. Between my department, solid waste, and OMB, we had some administrative confusion as far as the timing and getting this as a public hearing item and getting it right before the September 15th deadline to enact this as a non-ad valorem assessment. That actually worked in our benefit in a sense that we were going out for a new collection contract for the Lealman franchised area, and that rate that we received back is much less than what was forecasted. So the fund was able to survive for 2026, but in 2027, we're going to need some type of increase because there's great pressure because we didn't increase in 2026. So we've run almost to the bottom of the barrel as far as available funds. But like I said, it's now based on what I believe is a firm collection contract rate that we know, where last year we didn't know, and we promised we were going to come back and maybe adjust based on what we found. So the delay worked in our favor, but I do apologize on behalf of us and OMB for any confusion that may have caused. But Cassie's going to come up and run through what's comprised with those 2 increases for both 27 and 28 that's going to be recommended to you.
oh,
Yes.
question.
Not a question. I just want to thank you again for going to Mainlands. Mainlands, if you don't know, is a very large community in Pinellas Park, and they were getting frustrated because we had some issues and we had to put more stuff in the landfill than we normally do, and so they were getting a lot of trash dumped in their yard from the birds. And so it's the largest turnout I've seen at Mainlands ever from the people coming to talk to Paul, and they were not happy when they walked in, but when they left, they weren't happy, but they weren't as upset. So I want to thank you for keeping a calm head and helping them understand, and just you did a really great job. So thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Commissioner. So with that, I'm going to have Cassie come on up.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
So this morning, Cassie Hartman from Solid Waste, as Paul mentioned. I'm going to be talking to the Lealman MSBU Solid Waste Collection Disposal Fund. As you see pictured here is a map representing the collection area of the Lealman franchise. It's west of 275, a little east of 58th Street North, starting at about 40th Avenue North, going up to about primarily 62nd Avenue. The colors represent the collection zones. We took this map from the current collection vendor. The fund was put together in an effort to minimize the illegal dumping. A while ago, it's managed completely within itself. That's why the pressures of the expenditures and the fund that we are experiencing are really important to make sure that we're staying on top of what those increases are. As we mentioned, in 2023, the fund had added pressure because not only did the cost of inflation go up, but also we had an increase in participation in the fund. We had 2 large mobile home parks join, and it increased the number of units that were participating at an expedited rate. In order to save the fund in that sense, the Solid Waste Operating Fund acted as the bank and loaned $300,000 to the fund to be able to continue operations. We then adopted the $24 increase for 24 and 25. We made the recommendation to do the increase for $48 in 26. As that didn't happen, as Paul mentioned, we're recommending the same thing for 27 and 28. The contract originally for the collection was, we were forecasting $54 to $102 per unit increase for the year. It came in an additional only $20 per year per unit. The rate study was completed by Raft Hellis this year. We're good there. And that shows where we are today. 26 is at $20.68. The bottom visual that you're looking at is the bid that came in for Waste Management, who is the selected vendor. And the new rate will be at $22.25. And then there will be 5% escalation increases to the contract year over year. The current annual assessment is $240 with the proposal of $48. That'll take it to $288 per year for 27, and then for 330, it'll be $336 and 28. After those 2 years, when we get the fund back stabilized in 29, we'd be able to do increases that are more stable and in alignment with the collection contract where we saw that 5% increase year over year. Because the assessment increase did not go into place for FY26, the fund does have a little bit of opportunity where we have to do some administrative things to make sure that we don't run out of cash flow. Specifically, the loan payback that we talked about previously. In FY26, we plan to pay back $30,000 towards that. This year, we'll need to drop that to about $10,000, $11,000 to make sure that we have cash flow going into the new fiscal year. So that is one change that we'll need to make. So this just shows we are still making that recommendation. We delayed it by a year. There were no increases to the FY26 assessment. 27 and 28, again, we're recommending that $48 increase, which is the same recommendation as last year. And then post FY29, we'll reevaluate, and we should be able to keep the increases just very small and in alignment, again, with the collection contract. And that's all I have. Do you have any questions?
So these rates include that assessment? That assessment per unit?
Yeah, the assessment is currently $240 per year.
Right.
And then the increases, it would be $288 per year.
And this gets the fund health. If you remember, we had a change in contractors a couple of years ago that put the fund negative, so that's the reason they had to do an interfund loan to it. Again, this area is treated as a special assessment. And so we phased that in. But we also now have a new vendor that dropped their costs down, so it's a combination of all those. And this gets us out to where the fund gets aligned out post-2028.
So the rates that you're showing us that covers what?
Correct.
Yeah. Yes.
It gets us back whole to where the franchise fee, which is what this is, it's a franchise area to where everybody's using one vendor. Unlike other unincorporated areas now, it's right there and it's on your tax bill. And so this gets that fund back in alignment.
So because the assessment didn't go into play in 26, the fund is at risk of running out of cash. So the increases that you see here for 27 and 28, although the contract proposal came in much less than we anticipated, it worked in a benefit for us not having done the assessment in 26. So it's the same recommendation for the next 2 years to stabilize the fund. And then once the reserves are built back up, we'll be able to just keep the increases in alignment with the contract, the collection contract.
Not need the assessments.
The assessment it is, the way the fund takes money in is by assessment. That is the only way the revenue comes in, is by assessment, yes.
I got you. Okay. That's,
Covers the franchise fee.
Yes.
Commissioner Nowicki.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the update. What's the reserve add or percentage of the budget? I mean, is there any reserve numbers you have?
I don't have it showcased here. However, the forecasted projected, the ending reserve balance is projected to end at $392,000 this year, and it's projected in 27 if no assessment increase is made to end in the negative.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Okay.
Just, yes.
Did you have
Chair.
one, Commissioner
Yes,
Scheer?
Chair. Thank you. The assessment itself, is it assessed to individual parcels of property? I don't understand.
Yes, it's done by the parcels. There are communities like mobile home parks where they enter in as a community, but it is by resident and it's applied to the tax bill.
And is a flat fee, or is it based on their, is it a millage rate, or?
The way a franchise, let me just cover that real quick. The way a franchise thing would work is you could do this in any part of unincorporated where you take, say, okay, in this zone, we're gonna create this as a franchise. Now it's gonna go on their assessment and you can do it as a bill. And that way you have one single provider, not everybody individually going out and getting a contract. And so you have that in a lot of homeowners associations, you have that in a lot of mobile home parks and things like that. They've done this for Lealman, and this was done years ago. I forget which.
Yeah, it was a long time ago. It is a non-ad valorem assessment, so it has nothing to do with any of the millage or anything like that. It is a non-ad valorem assessment. It's one time per year on the tax bill.
The assessment is the assessment for a
For your garbage collection.
one-bedroom apartment, the same as a three-bedroom house?
In an apartment, that's a commercial, so these are residential only.
But how is it done? Is it based on the size of the home or anything? It's just
Nope, it's
flat
just
amount per unit?
yep, one person, one unit. Mhm.
Okay. And that was done again years ago. I don't know when.
Yes, Commissioner Nowicki.
Thank you, Chair. And so you said we entered into a new contract with the new franchisee for the trash pickup?
Yeah, periodically we bid it out. And when we bid it out, then we get people bidding on it, and then that becomes the new rate that we use.
So that happened recently.
So county sanitation was our prior collection vendor. Coastal bought out county sanitation, so it's currently Coastal. The contract was due to expire at the end of December this year of 2026. We did the RFP early in an effort to make sure we could get these rates nailed down ahead of budget.
You just bid it.
We just did it. You should see the contract come through very soon. So that
Just
that
bid it.
bid was, the evaluation was completed, so the contract is in process of being executed now.
Okay, but then we increase our tip fees at the plant where they take the trash. Now they're gonna come back in a few years and increase what they need to charge because we're increasing our rates. And then we're gonna have to go back and increase more again, right? I mean,
So the contract here, it has,
They have
yeah,
5
this
years.
contract right here, if you look at the bottom, the visual, it has the rates built out for the next 5 years of the contract, which is a 5% escalator. They are aware that our rates increase, and we do pay more because of the disposal, and that's an evaluation that we'll do when we do the rate studies with the 5% increases from 29, but I strongly believe that we'll be able to keep closer in line with the 5, maybe 6%, just because of administrative stuff. You know, we paid the tax collector to collect the money on the tax bill, so there's a 2% on any revenues we take in. So of course, we have to take into account for those items when we're looking at the assessment.
and we got a great tax collector.
We do.
Thank you.
Anything else? Any other questions? No? All right, thank you.
All things solid waste for today. Whenever you're ready.
We're ready.
You're ready?
Let's go.
Okay, next item up is Care About Me update. And so Karen's on, has a presentation for you.
Good morning. Good morning, Commissioners. All right. Oh, So this morning, I'm going to talk to you about our Care About Me update. And I'm going to walk you through 3 areas. So program updates, marketing updates, and then future planning. So just a reminder, the Care About Me program was first initiated by KPMG, who came in to provide recommendations for our system of care in Pinellas County, specific to mental health, substance use, and addiction services. The Care About Me pilot is the first of its kind in the state. This was launched May of 2024, almost exactly 2 years ago today. The hours of operation for the CAM, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 10 p.m., Saturdays, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., and it provides a multi-channel access for residents to call, text, chat, or go online and request services on their own. This program also allows a strong referral pipeline from community partners. So if we have residents that are working with community service providers, they can call with the resident that they're working with, or they can submit an online referral to connect that resident to a behavioral health service. Our current vendor is Unite Us. The annual budget is right around $1.4 million per year, and that agreement runs through September 30th of this year with renewal options available. The provider network that we are working with, we currently have 24 different behavioral health organizations with 66 programs, and on average per week, we have 250 appointment slots available for residents. So this is a slide you've seen before in the updates that have been sent in, and this really just provides an overview of who we've served and how well the program has served residents. So to date, we've served right around 2,800 residents. Of those, around 1,300 have agreed to have an appointment booked on their behalf. So just a reminder, the CAM does the assessment and books the appointment with the provider. So it really takes that lift off the resident having to look for appointments on their own. Our appointment attendance has increased over the last few months. So we were typically right around 38%. So of the appointments scheduled, right around 38% of those residents would attend their appointment. And over the last few months, we've increased that to right around 49% are attending their appointments. The average call time is right around 20 minutes. So you make the call, you speak to a clinician, they collect demographic information, they do various assessments to really make sure that they can match you with the most appropriate service. They book the appointment, they send you reminders. That entire interaction is 20 minutes. So it's really efficient right now. Appointment availability is right around 0 to 7 days. So if someone wants an appointment today, if someone wants an appointment tomorrow, they can more than likely get in. The average time that residents are choosing to have an appointment is right around 12 days. So they're making the appointment, to match their life. Life gets in the way of things, and right around 12 days is when they're selecting that appointment. On average, it takes about 3.5 contacts per resident, so sometimes we're calling them back. So if you request a service at midnight, let's say you submit the referral in, the specialists come in the next morning, and it may take a few times to contact you, and then that also includes those reminder calls of your upcoming appointment. We have about a 26% no-show rate, so that really is someone has had an appointment booked for them, and they just do not show up for their appointment. And that remaining, I'll say 25% from appointments attended and no-shows are patients who book the appointment and then call and later decline or reschedule. So, we're right, and I would say that's better than typical kind of nonprofit behavioral health work. You're usually seeing greater than a 30% no-show rate. So now I'd like to move into the marketing. So the marketing for Care About Me really has 2 parts. So we have a small part within the current vendor, and that really was focused, I would say, kind of more on the typical social service, human service marketing strategies. So tabling events, submitting flyers, in-person engagement, working with referral sources, but it really wasn't the splash. And so last year, I'll move into the next slide. Last year, the board approved the use of human services contracting with BKN Creative, And we did that through our opioid settlement miscellaneous funds. And so part of those funds can be used for prevention, marketing, warm handoff programs, which this program qualifies for. So BKN is a they developed a human-centered storytelling marketing campaign that builds trust, visibility, and sustained engagement for Pinellas residents. It is a hyper-local marketing strategy, multi-channel, creative content really designed to reduce stigma and to ask residents to, like a call to action to make those appointments. The goal was to ensure CAM was not only visible, but it was a trusted, remembered resource specific to Pinellas residents. That annual contract was $600,000. That contract ends September of this year. Sorry for the typo. It's September 30th of this year. And again, that was funded through opioid settlement miscellaneous funds. And now I'd like to walk you through what that firm has done since August of last year. So the first place that this really is, this is the website. So this is where all marketing goes back to. So QR codes will link back to the website, flyers, online ads, everything really brings you back to this place. And this is where residents can request services on their own. Providers can sign up to be a CAM provider, and you can learn more about that. This last year, we had over 30,000 visits to the website. And since that marketing firm took place, we've had 28,000 new visits to the website. So we are really seeing an impact as far as traffic. We've had 2,600 returning users, and on average, people stay on the website for about 30 seconds. We've also worked really hard to make sure that this searches come up. So it's the, and I'm going to get this wrong because I am not a marketing person, local search engine optimization. So the goal is that if you search mental health services near me or mental health services Largo, this work, kind of creating these sub pages, helps bring Care About Me to the top. And in some of the testing that we've done, Care About Me is usually around 10 to 15 in those searches that come up. And the goal, of course, was that it would, with this continued work, we would be in the top 5 or number 1. So the firm has spent a lot with social media, and we've really tried to make sure that, again, we're reinforcing that this is really only for Pinellas residents because this was a Pinellas investment. And so social media ads showcase areas in Pinellas County. So you can see that the pier is there, the beach is often showcased, and we're moving into kind of this call to action in social media. So the firm continues to evolve their strategy. And so you can see on that third picture, it says, overthinking everything, let's talk. So it's really trying to generate that call to action and normalizing what some behavioral health symptoms may feel like. With the organic and paid social media, we have generated 134 calls from those ads, over 500,000 impressions, about 180,000 link clicks, and that has reached right around 2,300 residents. The firm also conducted influencer campaigns. So they found social media influencers with high numbers of Pinellas followers, and they purchased their time to go on and speak about behavioral health, mental health, addiction to their viewers. And that has generated 29,000 views, 1,200 interactions, and that's where people are clicking and liking ads and following. And that has reached 18,000 residents for those influencers. And now we can move on to the splash, which we talked about at the board session where this original contract was approved. So the firm initiated a contract with iHeartRadio and had social media ads and radio ads on The Beat, 93.3 FLZ, and Roomba. And those ads have generated right around 2 million impressions and around 2,000 social ad clicks. So people are clicking to learn more about Care About Me. Next are our billboards, and I have a slide in a few slides that will show you kind of where those locations are. But several billboards, both static and digital, have been placed throughout the county. And the messaging, I would say, continues to evolve. So the top right, the Be Yourself, that was where the strategy really started. So kind of empowering residents, be yourself, you are strong, you are worth it. Kind of reinforcing, just empowering residents to reach out and ask for help. The next strategy, which actually was very popular on social media and also the billboard, was Strong Moms Ask for Support Too. So this was really geared towards postpartum moms who may be isolated and caring for a newborn and may need help. So we got a lot of clicks on those ads as well on social media. The bottom two are the newer strategy, and this really, again, is that call to action. And so it says, I know you say I'm fine, but if you're not, careaboutme.org. And so it's really kind of normalizing, again, what some people may be thinking all the time, like, I'm fine, but maybe you're not fine, and maybe this can resonate with you to click and reach out for services. The next billboard is this one on the right where it says, if you've been saying I should talk to someone, this is your sign. And I will say this billboard has moved the firm into kind of that next, the guerrilla marketing concept, where signs are being placed throughout Pinellas County in various ways with that very message. So kind of normalizing, this is your sign to make that call to reach out for behavioral health services. The billboards throughout Pinellas County have reached 40 million impressions, and that's data that is driven by the organization that publishes those billboards. The marketing firm also wrapped buses that went up and down US 19, bus shelters, and then we tested out the bus benches, and we sunsetted that campaign because, as you can see, there was a QR code, and we did not get as many clicks as was anticipated. So, part of marketing is kind of testing different strategies and seeing if it was successful. But the buses are still ongoing, and the bus shelters are also up as well throughout the county. And this just denotes where the billboards are placed. So we have two permanent billboards, 3 static billboards, and then rotating billboards throughout. And again, that has demonstrated over 40 million impressions. And so this is the newest initiative. This is called With Love from CAM. And the goal here is, I would say, a guerrilla marketing tactic where someone goes out into community and hands someone this note, and I'm going to show a video just kind of about the impact. Hand someone a note that really reassures them and provides them with comfort about they mean something, and if you need help, this is where to get it. This, I would say, is probably the most successful social media strategy that the firm has had. In, I want to say, the 2 weeks that this ad was running, they gained almost 400 followers on social media. And there's another version that just was posted, and they've gained, I want to say, 50 in 24 hours. And so I'm going to play this video. So lastly, for our marketing, part of the strategy was to also build community awareness. And so on May 30th, the Buchanan firm is hosting a community wellness event. This is at the England Brothers Park. We have Jed from The Joe Show as the MC. We have a mental health panel that is going to be facilitated by Wendy Ryan with ABC Action News. On that panel, we have Commissioner Kathleen Peters, who will be speaking about the importance of mental health, substance use and addiction. We have representatives from NAMI. We have a behavioral health provider. We have a CAM specialist. And we also have a representative from the Pinellas County Schools, which really has been such a great resource for us and is a big champion of the CAM. The wellness, community wellness event will have family-friendly activities, community connections, really, again, a call to action. And I believe we're also going to have Pinellas County Animal Services there because we all know that animals, are part of wellness as well. So now I'm going to walk you through both, I would say, peaks and valleys of the CAM pilot. So we'll start with successes. Since the CAM has been initiated, and since the marketing, has been initiated, we have seen a 27% increase in volume. So that investment of marketing and getting the word out really has demonstrated some improved results with volume. The CAM is a trusted resource with various community stakeholders such as schools and primary care offices. The closed loop process really has proven to be successful. So we often meet with partners such as the school system almost weekly to find out, is the CAM meeting your needs? Is it helping with youth? And we always hear that closed loop process really has made a difference. So historically, you would connect someone to services and you really would never know if they connected. This CAM program provides that closed loop. So the referral source knows, yes, this person was connected. Yes, they went to their appointment, and that didn't exist before. The CAM also expanded provider networks. So pre-CAM, when we did a lot of community outreach, what we would consistently hear, there are 2 places to go in Pinellas County to receive those services, kind of those larger community mental health centers. The work that this program has done is really expanded that provider network. So now we have 24 different providers that residents can choose from, which has provided, again, that greater accessibility of behavioral health services. We've already talked about appointment attendance, but it has improved, again, from that 38% to 49% with attendance. And we recently received statewide attention on this pilot. So over the last year, I worked with a few representatives who wanted to take the Pinellas model and expand it into 3 counties in Florida. And so I went up to Tallahassee and testified, and we were really hopeful that it was going to work. It did not move, but what I continue to hear is that those efforts are continuing because of the work that Pinellas County really has spearheaded with this program. And with any pilot, you have challenges. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the challenges that we've experienced. I would say, right off the bat, if we had a time machine and I could go back and make some different changes, I probably would say that our hypotheses about the phone lines being overwhelmed and too much volume based on that need, we paused on really that marketing blast. And I think in hindsight, we really should have done that from the beginning. We didn't see the volumes that were really early recommended by the consultant. And so that was, more a year to a year and a half in. We've also had some challenges with the current vendor. So when this was procured, we had one vendor that responded, that was Unite Us. And their platform wasn't built for CAM. So we adapted its use for CAM. And working with technology, sometimes that is challenging. So right now we have what we call a stacked technology program. So we have one system for the phones, we have one system for the closed loop process, we have assessments that are outside the platform, we have the scheduling widget, which is outside the platform. So, lesson learned, and if there were more options, I think our goal really would be to have one platform that could do all of those things. We've tested that in our contract monitoring, and it takes about 20 steps for the staff to go from point A to the end. And if volumes were where we hope they will be, I think that that's going to cause greater delays in residents receiving services and may also impact some of the CAM specialist turnover because they would probably lose job satisfaction going back and forth between several different technology options. We've also had pretty significant turnover in their leadership overseeing the CAM from that vendor. So not the staff that are taking care of the residents, It's really that kind of administration level that's overseeing the program. And so we have had that vendor on a contractual performance improvement plan for over a year, working on both of those things. We've also had some slow adoption from non-contracted providers. So if they're not contracted with the county, they are not contractually required to be part of the CAM. And so often this takes negotiation with vendors about why this is important and why it's meeting the residents' needs and why it's helpful for our community. And so we've had some slow adopters as far as the providers who are willing to enter into this. Stigma also plays a really big role in accessing this type of service. And so again, kind of back to that marketing campaign, I think going back and realizing that this takes more than tabling events. This really takes people understanding that behavioral health care is health care and accessing it should be no different than going to your primary health physician, and overthinking things is normal, and questioning maybe if you're drinking too much is normal. Like, those things are normal and they're experienced by a lot of people in community. So kind of, again, going back, reinforcing those messages from the beginning, I think would have really been helpful. Based on volume, this is a high cost, which I know we've talked about before in other meetings. It's high cost for the volume, and it's even higher when you look at that appointment attendance, which I know we've talked about before at these meetings. One area too that's also been a challenge, so we work very closely with the Juvenile Welfare Board, and working with the CAM is part of those contracts. So if you receive funding from the Juvenile Welfare Board, you are required to provide appointments with the CAM, but that's not the case for the state. And so I think we have some opportunity here that if the CAM were to continue, that maybe there's some legislative action that could be taken, that if you receive state funding, you are required to cooperate and provide appointments through the CAM. We've worked with our managing entity on this, so Central Florida Behavioral Health Network, and what we consistently hear is that they are unable to infuse contractual language into their state contracts without legislative action. And so I think that's an opportunity for us in the future. So now I'm going to walk you through a few options for future planning for the CAM. So option one, we could renew the contract with our existing vendor. I will say that we have worked very closely with this vendor to try to right-size the scope, right-size the budget, and the vendor's best and final offer is a savings of around $155,000. They did make some adjustments as far as their per license fee. So right now, part of our contract is built on a per license fee for users. And one of the negotiations that they have provided is that they would allow for unlimited licenses for all K through 12 schools. And there are a lot of schools and there are a lot of social workers and guidance counselors, so that is an overall savings. I do think we had hoped to get them a little bit closer to what we would like to see as far as kind of right-sizing budget. That also reduces the CAM specialists by 2 staff, and it completely changes their marketing initiatives from a local entity to a statewide entity that will only do digital marketing. Option 2 is we could initiate a new procurement to see if there are other vendors that are willing to get into this space. This was 4 years ago when we did the original procurement, and again, we had one vendor at the time. Our staff are ready, so we've already written the scope because we wanted to make sure that if that was a decision for today, that we would be ready to take action. So the scope is ready. We could release that within the next month, and I've worked with the purchasing team to make sure that they are kind of poised and ready if this was the action. Our target, of course, would be that we could be live October 1st if we have the right vendors that propose a program, but it's possible we may have to have some overlap just to make sure that there are no breaks in service. So it's possible our go-live date would be, around January, so we would have overlap with the current vendor. One challenge here, just to note, is that what we are asking for with this is a behavioral health specialty, so clinicians that do that work and have skill in that work, and a platform. And so that was really the challenge when we did the initial procurement, is that doesn't really exist. You either are usually a tech firm or you're a provider, and finding that blend of an organization that can do both has been challenging. Option 3 is that we could transition the CAM into a Pinellas County service. So we could hire staff to do the work, and we could use our new human services case management system that we are still implementing now. And that was an ARPA-funded program. So to build what we're looking for with the CAM, I met with that firm just to get an estimate of what could it be, also making sure that it's not another stacked technology kind of situation. And what they have stated is that to get the CAM up and running, it would be a one-time implementation cost right around $1.1 million. One thing that I think is important to note, that is the implementation cost. And so in year 2, once we're implemented, the licensing costs are $30,000. And so we would be looking at, I would say, around $700,000 on a go-forward basis for this program to continue in Pinellas County. And lastly, depending on the decisions of today, we do have a renewal option available with the current marketing firm. And in the opioid settlement miscellaneous fund, that's kind of that third fund that we have available with opioid settlement. We have around $440,000 remaining. And so we could renew that contract to keep the momentum with marketing using those funds and not general fund. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Val.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Karen, I just wanted to publicly commend the job that you're doing with CAM. And I think I've told you before that this has caught the attention of influential folks in Tallahassee. And you are to be commended for that. Are there providers in Pinellas County who do not participate in CAM?
Yes.
Okay, is Suncoast one of them?
No, Suncoast finally was, I would say, one of those in that slow adopter category, but they are on board.
So they're finally on board?
They're finally on board.
Okay. Is Directions participating?
They are not.
Okay. And I have some issues with that. So for the folks that are not participating, is there a way that the county, I don't know if punish is the right word, but basically hold that against them when they're trying to seek funding for other things? Because if they're not going to help our residents in this area, can we remind them that, you know, we may not cooperate with them when they want funding elsewhere?
Well,
I think
I
that
mean,
would be
is
a,
that, and I don't know if
The ans-
that's like a legal thing that we could do, but
Well, we always have, you always have the option when you're
Yeah.
just choosing to contract or provide funding for someone.
Right.
So you always have that option. And let's go back, because you hit on this, you know, I already text, you know, Tristan to say, let's make this a legislative issue, because getting the state support on that, our legislators were very supportive when we were trying to get this and not getting cooperation from these, the state entities. Because we actually issued an RFP out to try to get them to the table to work with Karen when they were talking about option and ideas. So I think taking that up as a legislative issue and looking at other providers that we provide funding for, I think is an absolutely reasonable thing to look at.
so are there providers that are not participating in CAM that are receiving county funding elsewhere?
no.
Okay.
So right now, this is in our behavioral health contracts. It is a requirement to receive funding from Human Services that you cooperate with the CAM. And
Okay.
JWB also has that in their contracts.
Okay, so that's helpful then. Alrighty. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Flowers?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First off, great presentation, a lot of information. I was taking notes in between. I really appreciate the utilization of the marketing realm, even utilizing influencers, making sure that those infomercials are geared towards focusing on the service provision, so that if they have any other things that they are influencing on behalf of, it doesn't rub up against what we are and degrade our mission and vision in this realm. I'm really impressed with the numbers. I know before we were very slow on some of our marketing efforts. But I know a large part of that, when we first started, it was the testing system, for us to do the testing. And that took quite a bit of time. I know I was one of the people like, what's going on? Why is it taking so long to kind of get this moving? For the number of persons who don't follow through on appointments, I think it was like 25%. That's not extremely high when you're talking about persons who are seeking services in the areas that we're providing through the CAM system. But maybe going forward, if you could break that out. So I know you gave us a verbal X number of individuals who may have switched their appointments, or whatnot, canceled because of the times didn't work or whatever. But if we could kind of switch that out or expand it so that we can truly see how many people are booking appointments but absolutely not following through on those appointments. I know they're getting follow-up calls. Hey, you missed your appointment. Would you like to reschedule? But I'd like to see those numbers, because I think for me, that'll have a difference. That'll make a difference for me. I would hate to see us bring this internally. You are hiring staff and you're paying about the price that you would. But for areas of specialty, I think it needs to stay where it is. I would hope that it stays where it is, because of that anonymity kind of piece that the residents get when they're going to see persons from organizations who have this skill set and that's what they do. So that's why I would not like to see it brought inside internally, even though over the long haul it may save us a few dollars. I would still like to do what's best for the clients. The last thing, I agree with what you're saying, Commissioner Lotval, on that. I was going to say, but it's already being done where you could, for persons who are applying for our funds, they get 10 points if they are currently a part of the CAM system. And I know they do that. When I served on the school board, persons got, I think it was 10 to 15 points if they had already done business with Pinellas County Schools or whatever, and that really separated people who were willing partners versus doing it because you got a, partner. So I like that idea. The last part is I really appreciate the strong relationship with our hospitals. I know we had them come in initially at the very beginning of this, and we saw what hospitals were on board. I'd love to maybe hear from them. If we could invite them in, it doesn't have to be all the time, but maybe periodically, just to kind of hear from them how it's working on their end, because sometimes things get mixed in the wash when you have a social worker working at a hospital and they're pulled in so many different directions, but they're trying to make sure that they're integrating all of the resources that persons have, just where we are, with their numbers. So I'd love to see a follow-up on that. Other than that, those are all of my comments. Again, I think that we're moving in the right direction. Anytime you have anything new, especially when you're talking about services that we're providing here, it does take a moment to have people become vested in you, to become invested, and to really see this as a resource and build it in as a part of their script, if you will, when they're talking to clients. It takes a moment. So I'm pretty pleased. I know there were concerns about whether or not we were actually where we were with advertising. I sent Barry, I was home, and the commercial came on the television. I ran in the living room and I started videoing it on my phone, and then I sent it to Barry and I said, we're on TV. Yep. So I've begun to really pay attention and to see that, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that has seen those commercials. So thank you so much for hearing what the concerns were of the commission, responding adequately, and making your presentation and show what some potential options are.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, I I think the whole part about building awareness for our residents has failed. I think the last piece of the With Love from CAM starts to get to more that top-down kind of messaging. But I've been to so many different groups, and there was a stretch of a couple of weeks where I was in front of about 4 or 5 groups, including a retirement home. You know, nobody's ever heard of them. Nobody's ever heard of CAM. Churches I've talked to, they have no idea what I'm talking about. So the message is not getting to the grassroots. And again, to me, I understand the macro at marketing and then the digital marketing. But if you don't know what it is, it's not like buying a product off a shelf at a grocery store. You know you have a need. So it's really difficult for people to grasp what it is. And so I think the awareness thing is the problem. You know, and I certainly understood the slow start with it because we were concerned the other way, knowing that there's a real need, but the connection between that and providing the service is just oceans apart. So I'm not, again, I'm you know, and again, it does take time. It doesn't happen overnight. I understand that as well. So some of that macro marketing is good, but it really needs to be more grassroots. I mean, you know, there's 20 churches, 24 churches in Dunedin. They have a group that meets they get together once a month or once every 2 months or something. That's a meeting they should go to. And those pastors would love it. And I just talked to a couple of them in town. It's no big deal. We also, you know our favorite group that we all talk to every year, the FAST folks, which sometimes irritating is an understatement, but their point with their members, they don't know them. They don't know of that service. So I don't know where that connection is falling or failing on the marketing side. I'd also like to get a little better understanding on the demographics of the users, because I see a lot of things directed at the schools, which I'm glad. I think that's great. One suicide with our kids is just way too many, and there's a lot of issues for kids that are today. Be able to. I don't know that they're connected yet, but maybe they're connecting on being able to find a place that's that they can have some anonymity. But there's a bunch of seniors that are lonely. You can do the ride around on our feeding, the program that delivers food to the Meals on Wheels group. Isolated people, depression, a loneliness. How do we touch base with those folks? You talked about the moms going through postpartum. But there's just a lot of niche areas that I don't know that we're touching. I know that there's a need for this. I'm not going down that road. My sense would be to at least go back out and see what's going on now versus 5 years ago when we first started doing this and there was one vendor. There might be 10 vendors now that have more broad-based experience that bring the shortfalls that we have. That's kind of the way I'm leaning. We go out and we find out that it's $2 million, maybe somehow the in-house piece. But I do share Commissioner Flowers' concerns about, it's a government group, an independent group doing it. There's something with that too. So, just some comments that I had, and so maybe you can respond to it.
Sure. So I routinely, I would say, meet with FAST and have worked with them on, distributing flyers and hearing their input and hearing feedback from them. I do think that I still think kind of both tracks are needed. And I've been very clear with the current vendor that, I'm not in agreement with the statewide strategy. My recommendation is this continued parallel process of that grassroots work, tabling events, working with providers, educating staff. There's a lot of turnover in the social service kind of case management field, so staying with them and educating the staff that are working with the populations is really important. So, one thing we could consider is, with the current marketing firm, we also could say we want a grassroots approach as well as the continued online strategy. They are wonderful, and they've indicated that they can get into that space. That really was with the current vendor. So, with shifts with contracts, if we renew with BKN, I feel very confident that that would be something that they would also be willing to do while they're working on kind of that social media, billboard awareness, brand splashing marketing strategy.
A little more expensive, I'm sure that the grassroots obviously is more timely and more cumbersome, but I do think it's the right way to do it. And I disagree that there's some of that general marketing is important too. You make the connections more than once, but having that handoff is a big deal. And I'm not saying to every single resident, but I'm talking about
Sure.
those points that are out there, those points of light. You talk to the churches, you talk to, retirement homes, you talk,
Agree.
whatever the groups that are out there. I think the programs that we have in our communities that are where our own staff goes to them. There's no reason that we don't have a table with them at the table.
Agree.
And so, anyway, all right, that's all I had.
And if I can respond also, to Commissioner Flowers and your point as well, when you look at the marketing, we've been very intentional to not have it look like Pinellas County government, because we don't want anyone thinking, like Pinellas County government is providing behavioral health care. So that is just something to consider with that third option, is that would shift because it would become, a government program versus a vendor.
Yeah,
Peters?
so about your comment about churches, I'm surprised, because FAST is so active and they've got so many churches engaged in FAST, but it's just whether or not that pastor or that minister, sure, I love this, I know about it, but the forefront of his mind is not promoting something else. The forefront of their mind is their liturgy and other stuff. So I don't know why we're not penetrating more with the churches, because we should be, based on FAST and their action and their call to action. It surprises me that you feel churches aren't getting connected. And with seniors, first off, when you work with someone with addiction, it takes typically 7 times and 7 attempts on rehab before they get successful. And with stigma associated with behavioral health, if we're getting them in 3.5 touches, that's impressive, because typically with this particular issue, coupled with the stigma, it normally takes more than 3. So if we're getting them in 3.5, that's better than average, because average is 7. And the other thing with seniors, which I agree, and they're very isolated, but then you got, not only do we have the stigma issue, but we have a generational issue, because a lot of our seniors are from a generation of, family business. And if someone's got mental illness, a lot of times they don't admit that there's mental illness, but you don't talk about family business outside of the family, right? And so there's barriers that come with generations. My generation was, you never talk about the family business outside of the family. And if you got a problem, we don't talk about that outside of the family. And so there's a lot of barriers that, this is a tough issue to break through many, many barriers. And I think this marketing finally is getting us there. I agree with you. We should have done the marketing sooner. We should not have been so conservative on that, and scared. I think we should have welcomed that overflow if it would have come. But I agree with Commissioner Flowers on number 3. I don't think that belongs in the, well, evidently Barry has something to add that's really good.
One of the issues that we're here because we're struggling, I heard the board and your preferences to have an outside organization and see what's out there. The concern I have is when we built this platform, we were linked to that firm that owned the platform. And so I just passed Karen a note that said, could we build out, because now we have a human services system, could we build out our platform, but then hire a vendor but they operate under the platform that we own. That way, if we want to switch vendors or stuff in the future, provide more flexibility. She said maybe.
So my next comment was going to be, can we not make the decision on those options yet? Because I don't think we've had enough time to even flesh it out in my mind. I'm not comfortable making it county program staff. Our platform, I'm very comfortable with and contracting out. So I don't know that I'm prepared to give you a recommendation on which option today. On the marketing, I'm prepared to say yes. I think we should move forward on the marketing. It's still opiate money, right? And so it's 200,000 less than it was before, but it's not general fund, it's not ad valorem taxes. So I think on the marketing, I'm a yes on the marketing. But I don't know that we're ready for a decision on what to do, because I think Barry's idea may be the best one yet. And what would be the timing for us to use ours? How long would that take? And so I think if we did something like that, we're not ready for that decision yet. So that's just my thought.
So the firm that we're currently working with right now to implement our system through ARPA indicated that they believe they could be ready by January, fully, ready to go, partially maybe by 10/1, which we could probably work with. The current agreement with Unite Us is slated to end 9/30. And so if we're gonna go out to procurement, we could put out probably several different versions. We could try to procure both, see what occurs. We could also procure just the clinical component and see who responds. I mean, it's
Could we
just really
make this-
casting a net to see.
I'm not saying throw this down the road a month. I'm saying, can we wait till Tuesday? Do you know what I'm saying? Can you get kind of a little bit of that information?
You
And
have time. I just threw Karen a curveball, obviously, and I usually don't do that, but, I was listening to the board's preference around having that outside view, which makes a lot of sense. My concern is, we can really reduce our cost utilizing our platform and not be beholden to a vendor.
Right,
to
yeah.
have to do a
See,
switch in the
I
future.
love that. So if we could see if that's possible, and then bring it back to us Tuesday or bring us back to us next week. I'm not saying I'm not ready and I need a month. I'm just saying I need a day or two, a couple days, and I think that, to me, that's the most ideal option, which wasn't even on here. So I think just I don't mean down the road. I'm just saying soon make that decision. I don't want to see it go away. That's the one thing I will not, that wasn't an option, get rid of it. There was talk about getting rid of it. I think if you get rid of it, you have a huge impact on ERs, will have a huge negative impact in the jails. And I am not in favor of getting rid of it at all. And we saw a huge increase in less than 1 year of marketing. And I think if we continue that marketing effort, it's going to be more of a household name, it'll be more common. I spoke at an event yesterday morning, way too early in the morning, and nearly a lot of principals were there, a lot of principals were there, from middle school and high school. And I mentioned the CAM, and they were not, and even the students that were in there and were nodding their heads. So the schools and the students know. And now what we're doing is, by allowing this in the school, which is so critically important, because now you're making generational change, right? We now are letting middle school and high school kids know it's okay to talk about it. It's okay to understand if you feel not right. And so to get generational change is not going to happen overnight. But I can tell you, to get some generational change in the senior population it's going to be really difficult. And it's unfortunate, but it's going to be difficult because of some of those barriers. But I do not want to see this go away. That, to me, is not an option. Shouldn't even be on the table. So,
Yeah, let me just follow up real quickly, and then we'll come to you, Commissioner Scheer. I totally agree. I mean, I think the fertile ground, so to speak, for the intergenerational group is our kids, and, the high schoolers and even middle schoolers, perhaps. But again, I don't think that keeps us from being a little bit more grassroots. So if we go to that marketing, and I agree, I think you need both tracks if it's going to be effective. So if we have the 400, whatever it is, from opioid, that's one thing. But I mean, I don't want us to do a program that, like you said, is a statewide. That's not doing it. However, back to the comment that was made about seniors and being more difficult, and I'm not saying it isn't. You know, as Commissioner Latvala would say, the older we get, the more difficult we are to make changes. He's referring to me, I mean. But I do think there is, I don't think that should stop the effort. I don't think that should keep us out of the homes, because our retirement homes, I'm telling you, I had a group of about 40 people, 50 people, and I was talking about this program, and I had 4 or 5 that said, we haven't heard of it. And it doesn't mean that they're going to rush to get involved, but if they have all kinds of activities there. They have all kinds of ways to introduce services that might be available. And even if it's 1 or 2 or 3, what our vets have gone through, they've got the VA, but some don't use the VA. And they want to, again, anonymity from that organization. So I just think it doesn't mean that that's going to be the high success area, but it doesn't mean we don't keep trying. And I know that's what, Commissioner Peters wasn't saying that either, but so I think we're all kind of on board with that. I just make sure that our marketing touches base with all of that, and that our grassroots efforts touches base with that too.
Sure.
So that we can, it's real hands-on.
I could, explore. So what I had listed up there was the $440,000 that we have in the opioid miscellaneous fund. We also have the city-county fund, which is, it's not part of that, regional fund. So that is decision-making within this board. So I can reach back out to the marketing firm to find out what would it look like to continue this kind of massive digital, splash that they're also executing, but then also say, what could you do for that kind of grassroots work? Maybe it's hiring an additional person to go out there and do that work, that, those connections, just to see. So there, my ask would not be of general fund. I would look to explore how can we use maybe the second pot of opioid settlement funds for this.
Especially as we're trying to get this thing successful. Commissioner Scheer?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I have quite a few things. But first I want to, Karen, on the marketing, you said it was 600,000?
Yes.
That was what we approved last time?
Yes.
Is there anything left?
I'd have to get the year-to-date. We're still working with them through 9/30, so I believe there is still funding left through the contract.
And then that's going to be gone, and then you're thinking maybe another marketing campaign for 440,000?
A renewal, sure, with that firm for the 441 or more if we want to have them explore a grassroots campaign as well.
That would come from ARPA, is that what you said?
No, it would come from opioid settlement. So we have 3 funding allocations through opioid settlement. One is the regional, which that's part of the opioid abatement funding board that helps make those funding decisions. Then we have a city-county allocation, which is, facilitated and approved by this board. And then we had an opioid miscellaneous fund, which doesn't have the same requirements that those 2 other allocations have.
Is that what's funding the 1,381,000 for this budget, or is that coming out of?
That's coming out of general fund.
Okay, all right. I just needed to have that. So I just wanted to say, I had a little marketing experience, and for me, the problem is, like Commissioner Egger said, nobody knows this program's out there. And I think it's a branding failure, because I believe people would take advantage of it if they knew of it. And I wasn't around when this was created, but for me, Care About Me, it doesn't say anything, Why, I don't know why it doesn't say help for you. This is our program, help for you. The billboard would say desperate for help, help for you. Free counseling for addiction, mental health, but make it simple. These billboards that they've created are so abstract, I'm not even sure what they're selling. And are the services that they can get connected with, are they free to people?
They are not.
They're not. So, but you can get them connected, so.
Right, you get connected based on your insurance, so they match you to your insurance, so it
To
depends.
be more specific with the ads, I'm not crazy about the name. I don't think it's too late for a rebranding. If you want to spend more money on marketing, I'm all for it, because I think that this system would work. But we need a new marketing program. to get people to understand what it is, because these billboards don't really tell me what it is we're trying to do. We're trying to get people connected with the services they need. Care About Me doesn't do it for me, but if you could, if the advertising gurus could come up with a way to get people to understand, we're going to get you connected with the help you need, because you're desperate for it right now, then I think it could work. But those are my thoughts. I'll just.
And to your point, I'm guessing that the connection with the schools has been very, not targeted on issues that the kids face, right? So, I mean, if it's as successful as I am hearing, if people are having issues with bullying, if people are having issues with stress and that kind of, it's very specific, and these kids are picking up on it. I don't disagree with your comment about that general marketing. It's almost like towards the end, some of that stuff towards the end was I think getting better as it complements a grassroots effort. But before that, it was like such a, like, I'm not even feel good for something. I wasn't even sure what it was for. And if residents are trying to even know that we have such a service in this county, I mean, it probably wasn't making a connection either. I don't know. Did you have anything else? I'm sorry.
Maybe we should consider a new marketing firm with new ideas on how to get the message out before we spend more money. Just what I was thinking.
Kind of going out for rebidding.
And have them pitch us part marketing program, maybe a rebranding of the name, maybe here's the ads we'd like to put together, you know.
Commissioner Nowicki.
Thank you, Chair. You know, hats off to you, Karen. You know, I'm a St. Pete guy, and you know, I see things on the pier posted to lamp posts. I've seen the billboards. You know, I've seen a lot of the marketing over the last few months really gear up, and you know, I guess it shows in the appointments, because it looks like last year at this time there was only 740 appointments scheduled, but this time, you know, this year it's 1,358 appointments. So you definitely see more appointments scheduled, which is good. Though I'm a little hesitant on like a potential like penalizing a provider for not working with, or like mandating that somebody works with this program, just because it's my understanding that there's a duplicate service that was, and I'm kind of new to this and learning on the fly, but Pinellas Wellness Connection, which started in 2022, and maybe I could have a one-on-one or something, or a conversation about that. That is a group of providers that does the same exact, my understanding, same exact thing as CAM. And so, and our appointment attended rate is 49%. So, you know, we're scheduling appointments and providers are making themselves available, but then these people don't show up. You know, that's services and time that they've allocated to see somebody, and then, you know, they're not showing up from an appointment we scheduled, but then we're going to say, hey, if you don't work with us and get a 50% appointment show rate, you know, we're going to penalize you for not working with us. You know, so I just don't necessarily know if that's fair, and happy to have more discussion on it, but I think the marketing has been really, you know, good, and it has seen an increase in appointments. You know, I would just like to know more about, you know, the Pinellas Wellness Connection and those providers. Is there duplicated service from the nonprofit side? But I support the marketing, and I'm happy to, you know, continue, you know, doing that, because I think there's good results from that.
So I can happily meet with you to talk about the difference. The Wellness Connection is a group of about 5 to 6 providers, kind of those local community nonprofit providers. It does not include private providers. It is about 5, and they do not schedule appointments. So you can refer to them. They have a line, and they will call you back and schedule you with one of those providers, but it is not a booking service. And it does not have the same number of providers, and they do not do a clinical assessment with the resident on the phone prior to matching them with the appointment.
I got a follow-up.
Did you have something?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
So I think because, see, I've seen a huge shift in the marketing in not even a year. So I don't think the marketing is bad. And I wouldn't want to throw that away and start all over. That means we would have wasted $600,000. I think since we've seen a tick up on appointments, that we keep steady on the course and go. I don't think there's anything wrong with the name. And the obscurity of the slogan is what makes people curious. So I don't know that that's an issue. And I think because we didn't do any marketing before, really, to speak of, we're doing marketing now. We've seen a big tick up. I think it's going to take, if you keep changing your brand, you're never going to have branding, right? So I think I don't agree with changing the branding. I think we work on branding, but I don't think we change the name and change all that. And I know we talked about another phone number and all that kind of stuff. And I you know, maybe, I don't know, but I'm not the expert. My knowledge of marketing is very small. So I don't think I want to disrupt. I really want to see this through and see if we can really make it work. The not show up rate is actually a good number compared to typical. So even in the wellness center, if they have someone call and make an appointment, they probably have a higher no-show rate. So it's just, this isn't like regular business. This is so different when you're talking about people that suffer from mental illness or addiction. And a lot of times it's not even mental illness. Mental illness is very different than mental health. And a lot of people don't even know that. And it's not like this is a huge, they're not in crisis. This is not for crisis. We have a crisis system. So someone who's in crisis we're getting 911 or they're going to a Baker Act facility. That's a whole different system. This is not that. So people that are dire, if it's dire, they're going typically to a Baker Act. This is for people who are just not feeling right. This isn't emergency kind of stuff. It's not that. This is very different. And this is a very complex issue to even begin to try to understand. And, you know, it took me many years and a lot of tours and a lot of interviews with a lot of judges and a lot of sheriffs and a lot of people in mental illness to even scratch the surface on understanding it. So, so this is just a different animal. It's not regular business. It's just very different. The other question I did have is Commissioner Flowers mentioned hospitals. Which hospitals are partnering with us?
So we currently have, for the Pinellas Matters program, we have staff we have a vendor and staff in Northside Hospital and Bayfront. And once they meet with someone in the hospital and they're ready to activate for treatment,
Now, is this Pinellas Matters or different than Pinellas Matters?
This is Pinellas Matters, so those staff use the CAM. And so before, they would just link to what services they knew. So when someone is ready to discharge from the hospital from that program, they call the CAM, they do an assessment, a substance use assessment, and then link them, and we have warm handoff to detox. So someone can go right from the hospital into detox through.
We really haven't talked about Pinellas Manor, and I want to talk to you about Pinellas Manor because I don't understand what the holdup is at Largo, but we can talk about that on the side. Because our goal is to have that in every hospital in 3 years, and it doesn't, we seem to have hit I want to learn about what the snag is and why we're not moving forward. So I was just curious. So Baycare is not a partner in the CAM?
Not yet.
No.
And
That's why I had to come off of Northside Hospital's Board of Trustees.
right, I had to come off of Largo for the
because,
same reason.
of the interaction
Yeah,
here.
yeah, I had to come off Largo for the same reason. So we have Orlando, they're partnering, HCA is partnering, Advent there's only one, do we have an Advent here?
We have one Advent in North County, and we meet with them for the health program, so they're aware of it, but we haven't operationalized.
Pinellas Matters, I got it.
But she has had meetings. You've had meetings with, like, just recently with Baycare.
We meet with them quarterly to talk about updates, yes.
Okay. So, and they were on the list weren't they after Largo at St. Anthony's?
Yes,
Okay.
for Pinellas Matters.
Or Pinellas Matters? Okay. And I don't want to mix them up, but when she had mentioned hospitals, I was like, are they, and then Pinellas Matters, yes, I get why they're connected. Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner, just a question, because obviously respect Your background in this, the option 1 and 2 were, it was not about bringing it in. It was really about keeping with who we have versus
Right.
going out to see if there's anybody else that not only provides a different perspective. Are you saying you want to
Close up
stick
to the microphone.
Excuse me, thank you. Did you say you wanted to stick with number 1?
No, what I liked Barry's option that's not on here.
Right, which would be number 2, but using our platform.
Correct.
Yeah.
You're going out, seeing who would be willing.
I would ask for Karen to look at that and see if that's
Yeah.
a good option.
And it could be
before I
that-
commit her to something.
It could be that Unite Us would rebid anyways.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, I really like that. First off, I don't like the stacked. Because there were a lot of drawbacks, and as we grow, we could, you mentioned some of the things that would be unintended consequences and negative outcomes. So I like that, and so I like that. I don't like the stack, so I wasn't crazy about 1 because of the stack. I'm not at all liking number 3.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we go out, if we're going to find that seamless, but if we have something already in-house that we can build on, that to me is
Then
more.
we'll always have that kind of
Yeah,
stable.
so I think we need that information and make that decision later.
bring
But
it
I know
back
you
to you.
need a decision on marketing or consensus, and I think we stay the course on marketing.
Regardless of what group we end up
Right.
with.
We can move
we're-
forward on
We're
that.
going to, and again, I just think, again, we're not the marketing experts here, but I know what I like when I see it, and this early stuff was just, I'm not even sure, it helped with awareness, frankly. I'm just talking about the pure marketing side. The later stuff was actually a little, I liked it. It was better. It seemed more to the point about what it is we're talking about.
Yeah,
So
and I
anyway.
too am not a marketing expert, as you know, like social services really is it. But I will tell you, the firm we're working with, they are very willing to pivot. So we meet with them weekly, we can give them feedback. I would almost guarantee they're watching this to kind of hear this feedback. So I do think that, we can evolve if the goal from this board is to stay with that firm and renew that contract and ask for different outcomes and different strategies.
So my
Commissioner-
thought, I'm sorry.
Oh, just real quick. We've had the program for several years, but to your point, the marketing really has only been this last year. Before,
Not even a
it
year.
Not
was-
even a year.
It was virtually non-existent. And so the reason people didn't know is because we didn't do a good job with that period. Okay, regardless of the reasons. So the marketing piece is kind of really a rebranding. The Care About Me is a rebranding that is just really started. And you said not even a year into it. But also, you did bring some internal resources to even look at what the firm was doing. Maybe talk quickly about that, Steve.
I'm sorry.
I
Right, so
just
we
wanted
did-
to go on the money real quick. So, and I understand the nursing home, and I think you really hit a good spot on that. I really do. So the question would be, I would have thought the first year, startup getting going, gearing up, would be more expensive than the second year. So I don't know how different it is to go from 600,000 to 4 or whatever it was. But so since we didn't get into Largo, I'm assuming we didn't spend the money we planned on spending on that opiate money to get Pinellas Matters moving. So if you feel, and that would be up for you in your negotiations, if you feel that more grassroots and getting in that generation of population, we could move forward on the 400, and if they need more, because we feel we're not hitting that target, we could always use some of that Pinellas Matters money that's still opiate money, still not taxpayer money, still opiate money, and we can use that to enhance if you don't feel we're hitting that target audience.
Again, see the marketing program, I mean,
So there is an option to beef that up if we have to, but at this point, it was 400, whatever the number was, and I'm good with that unless, because when you gear up, that's when you cost more money, right? And so to go on, it shouldn't have to be the same amount. But I don't know if you want to gear up another
That's what she
notch.
was kind of saying, too,
Yeah.
that they were looking at that program. It may not be, to your
Yeah.
point.
Yeah, so I can meet with the current marketing vendor, so BKN, to look at what could you do with both that parallel process. So removing the line item with Unite Us for marketing, and then talk to BKN about what does it look like? Is it more because you're going to be doing the continuous kind of splash, the continuous digital strategy, and grassroots? The 441 remaining was just what's left in that opioid miscellaneous fund. So if it's more, I could come back and say it would be this amount out of the city county fund, which really, as you stated, was set aside for the Pinellas Matters program. And I want to say we have about, and I could be off by, but about 20 million in the city county fund for opioid abatement activities. So it would not be an ask of general fund.
I think that would be great. So what's your thought on that going out to market and seeing what's out there from a bid standpoint?
For the program? I think actually option 4, which I'll call it very, best, I think that's a very smart option. I think it's really important that we own the data, we own the platform, that we're not reliant on a vendor and their kind of technology struggles. We have, worked very closely with BTS on our current implementation, and what I consistently hear from, Brian at BTS is the system that we've implemented is extremely powerful. And so there's really a confidence level that we will be able to accomplish what we need to with the CAM. With implementing it in that system, it's just $1 million implementation. So I feel like if we're asking for a clinical provider to run the kind of CAM operations, I think we will absolutely get a lot more than just one run response. I think asking for the combination has proven difficult.
And if the figures that she used to bring it internal is consistent with what an external agency would pay to be able to run something like that, well, then we would recoup the upfront cost within a couple of years.
Correct.
So it'd be a very cost-effective decision.
Yeah, it's a good idea. Any other questions before we move on?
No, I'd just like to say I like the berry alternative myself.
We're going to call it the Berry
I
alternative?
think so, yeah.
Good.
I'll put it out to bid as the Berry alternative.
No,
And
I'd
do,
rather call it the Karen alternative. No, I'm kidding.
and I
I'm
would
good
like to
with that.
continue the marketing. I just wanted like to see a little more focus on what problem somebody might have and why they should call. That's all.
Yeah.
You got some
Some direction.
thoughts and directions? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very
Great
much.
work. Very
Thank
great
you.
work. Yeah, thanks. Okay, moving on to number 3, Office of Human Rights Program Review.
All right, so you guys come on up. So, Commissioner, last year you asked us to look at the Office of Human Rights and really look at the what they did and whether the program was needed either in part or in whole. So as we began looking at this, it got really complicated really quick because they do a lot of things that in other places it's decentralized. So, they do things for our grants over in transportation and over in different departments, and that in a different county, they may have a person down in that department doing it. So getting an apples-to-apples comparison was very difficult. So I put Tom and Blaine to kind of shepherd kind of this review process, but we really needed data collection. We needed to be able to dig in and break down their programs to where we can provide you an apples to apples as you make a decision regarding going forward with this program. So we employed Local Government Solutions to help us with that data collection piece. And so I'm going to turn it over to Tom and Alan to let them kind of present to you the findings and kind of get your feedback on where, this is the data dump, this is the information. At the end, we'd like to know where do you want to go with this. So with that, I'll turn it over to Tom.
Thank you, Barry. Commissioner Tom Armonte, Assistant County Administrator. As Barry mentioned, this is one of the studies that you asked for the staff to conduct a review. This has been a staff-led process, as Barry mentioned. Blaine, Chris Rose, And also in the crowd is the Director of the Office of Human Rights, Bettina Barron, and she was instrumental in how we completed this report. A copy of the report was sent to you. It was also provided to the Office of Human Rights Board. Ellen will walk you through the presentation. It's a brief presentation, and we will make it available to answer any questions. But the report that you received really went through the detail of the department, so you can be informed as you make decisions through the budget process. So with that, Alan?
Good morning, Honorable Chair, Commission, Mr. County Administrator. My name is Alan Rosen. I'm the CEO of Local Government Solutions, and I'm honored to be here with you today. Thank you so much for having me. So I'll be with you for about 15 minutes, and then we'll open it up for questions. We're going to walk through basically a high-level overview of the report. Obviously, it's a pretty in-depth report, and we'll cover kind of the highlights. So what we're going to kind of talk about today, we'll walk through the project goals, some limited recommendations, an overview of the department, how it runs, funding comparison, program overview, and then any questions. We also have some addendum material in here. We're not going to go over those slides, but they're there for your information if you want to go through some of those. So just to kind of reiterate what this project was and what it was not. Our goals were to clarify the purpose, authority, and the customers for each of the programs, determining the staffing, budget, and performance, identify any overlap from internal and external organizations, and compare to peer agencies. Also assess the risk of reorganization, reduction, or elimination. Specifically, it was not a recommendation-driven project, and therefore, as you read through the report, you'll see there's not a lot of recommendations in there. It's more about giving you the information you need to make a policy decision. That being said, as you do go through these things, sometimes things jump out to you. So there were 4 limited recommendations that we did have, including increasing, cost recovery efforts, evaluating cost recovery from different organizations, like federal government from when you do grant administration, and evaluating cost recovery from constitutional officers as well, and exploring additional revenue from the wage theft program. The other one is to just continue monitoring federal guidance and state guidance. As you know, it changes all the time. And just as you would with any other program, just monitoring what's out there so that you're making sure that you're keeping up with the requirements. And also to let you know that the administration is already aware of these and they're already working on these things. So for context on governance, OHR is not structured like a typical department. It does not answer directly to Barry. It answers to the Human Rights Board, which you see here, and includes representatives from across the county. So it's a more decentralized governance structure, and the office is relatively small, covering all the programs that they have with about 10 full-time equivalent positions. What we did was we tried to combine the programs into an understandable framework, and we grouped them into 10 programs across 5 different categories. And you see them here across, starting from the left to the right, the federal partnership programs, disability access, Title VI discrimination work, grant compliance, and local regulatory compliance. So the main thought of these is, they serve internal customers, they serve external customers, some of them serve both, and it's really a very diverse portfolio, and these staff serve this broad portfolio of programs. Looking at the budget, the 5-year trend, looking from FY20 actual to FY25 actual, the budget increased by about 17%, which actually follows in line with CPI over that time, inflationary pressures. And also with the budget proposal for FY27 that we saw from the department, it actually includes a decrease of $89,000 from FY26 budget amounts. So the trend is not specifically upward mobile. And also looking at the revenues, you can see they're kind of volatile. That's because they're based on federal reimbursement timelines and program activity. So sometimes their timeline doesn't hit you. You look at FY25, it goes down a lot, but it's just the processing timeline for the federal government to get those monies back to you. So we wanted to do a comparison of peer organizations, and these were chosen based on demographic information above and below your county, just to kind of get a general idea of where you sit in the middle of those. The top 5, you can see those are required programs. So as you can see, all the counties do those because they're required. The ones below, there's a little bit more variability because they're not specifically required programs. They're more local decision on what you want to do. So for example, not all organizations have something similar to councils for persons with disabilities. Some agencies do not have a federal partnership for something like FEBA or FHAP. Even if they don't, sometimes they have local programs that aren't partnerships, so they don't get funding from the federal government, but they do something local, and that's where you see some of those notes there. And then in addition, you also see some variability in refueling assistance and wage theft as well. And all right, moving on to another comparison. We wanted to look and see, do other agencies fund these in a different way than you do? The answer is basically no. Most of these, especially the required programs, are required kind of like unfunded mandates, and funding comes from the general fund or indirect cost recovery for grant compliance, that sort of thing. So there were no surprises there. So in looking at these programs, we kind of split them into 2 camps. So we're going to look at the required programs here first. And when we talk about required programs, what we mean is they're either required by federal or state law, or the cost of eliminating those programs would be so onerous, it may not make sense to eliminate those. So for an example, it's EEOP reporting. The DOJ, that's related to the DOJ grants that you get. You get about $3.2 million a year in DOJ grants. Typically, they require reporting on EEOP-type programs that you provide. They are not currently requiring that reporting, but it's still incumbent upon the county to collect and keep that data. You don't necessarily have to do that, but if you don't, you would be at risk of losing $3.2 million a year in funding. And when you see expenditures and FTEs on the right, that's based on FY26 budgeted amounts. And it reflects the department's understanding of where they spend their time. So where you see something like 0.8 FTEs for ADA coordinator and that type of work, that's not one person. It's a number of people spread over, that work spread over a number of people, but it takes about the equivalent of 80% of one person's time during the year, if that makes sense. Looking at the locally authorized programs, these are those other 5 programs. Again, it's a mix of both internal and external customers. And the biggest thing here is this is where you see a lot of variation with the peer counties as well, right? Because they're not required programs. The only programs here that have any sort of revenue generally are FEPA and FHAP. And as you can see, they don't pay for the entire cost of those programs. And that reimbursement is based on the casework and program participation. So the remaining, everything else is really supported by the general fund. And one example we highlighted earlier, actually I forgot to mention it, was the wage theft program. Wage theft, they do currently recover costs for things like postage. But one of the things that we saw was in the way it's worded in the organization is you can try to get back money for administrative costs. So one of our questions was, what does that really mean? And the department's working right now with the county attorney to determine, is there more cost recovery that can be done to help support that program? So we're going to spend a majority of our time on this. This is a very detailed slide here with a lot of in-depth information. We kind of want to go over, the main point here is what happens to your customers basically if you decide you don't want to do these programs. Obviously, these aren't all your programs. What we wanted to focus here on was programs that have somewhat of an overlap. They might be provided by the federal or state government. For most of them, wage theft and recovery is not the case there. But what would happen if the county decided they did not want to provide these services anymore? So we'll start with FEPA, the Fair Employment Practices Agency. Basically, this is the county's local partner for the EEOC. Agencies, people that work in agencies in the county, if they have an issue with their employer on discrimination, they can come to the local level instead of going to the state and the federal level. The biggest difference here between what you provide and what is provided at the state and local level is that you help provide services to those people that work in really small agencies. So small organizations that have between 5 and 15 employees or 5 and 14 employees, they can come to your office and help get those services. And those services are basically focusing on mediation with those organizations to try to come to a conclusion, or moving on to allowing them the right to sue in court if they feel like they were discriminated against. And the biggest issue, if you didn't do this, was reduced access for certain employees, because the federal government will not provide those services for those really small agencies. It's only you that does that. And also increased timelines and increased cost to get to that determination of right to sue. Moving down one to fair housing employment, this is the county's local partnership with HUD to investigate housing discrimination issues and complaints and working towards resolution for those. Primary services are individuals who have fewer resources, limited housing options. Cases would shift to state or federal agencies if the county didn't do it. And while those services still exist, the county, OHR is able to meet those timelines, a 100-day timeline target with 70% of the time, where currently state and federal government agencies, they're only able to meet that 30% of the time. So it takes them a lot longer to get to that point. And as you know, if you've worked in housing or homelessness, every day counts when you're in that situation. And so being able to provide that services faster really helps out the people that live in the county that are going through these issues. Moving down to refueling assistance. This is a program that basically received complaints from Pinellas County residents. I don't think that there has been any cases over the last year, either at the state or local level. So basically what it is it requires if somebody with disability needs some assistance in refueling, they can honk their horn or do something else and get somebody's assistance to come help them pump gas. The state and the federal government do have laws. Interestingly enough, the way the state law is written, it actually doesn't apply to any gas station in Florida, because it's only for gas stations that are full service only. And what the state told me is there actually are no full service only stations in Florida. That may or may not be the case. That's what they told me. But still, there's federal law that requires signage and people to assist if there's more than one person working. The other difference with the county is you have the ability for code enforcement and fines to get compliance. That does not exist at the other two levels. And so if somebody wanted a resolution, it may be longer timelines if they had to rely on the state or federal government. Maybe a more burdensome process, costs a lot of money. And the goal here is actually not, if I read the law correctly, and I'm not an attorney, it seems like the goal in this area is compliance, not damages, right? So if somebody suing those agencies can't get damages, only compliance. Moving on to harassment and training, this is more of an internal program for your staff. So it supports county workforce and basically provides harassment prevention training to employees and internal investigations of complaints. They basically help work with early resolution before cases escalate, and they're able to solve cases in about 58 days based on the information we got from the department. If this program were eliminated, the county staff would have to rely on external organizations like the EEOC, and then go into court to get resolution if they feel like they were discriminated against or harassed. This generally goes to the right to sue pathway. If the county did not want to provide this program anymore, the county staff would be faced with longer timelines to resolution. And the biggest thing is, increased legal exposure to the county, because without having that outlet here, they would have to go somewhere else, and the next outlet is that direction. Oh, sorry. I got click happy there for a second. So the last one is the wage theft program. This is a program that allows people who feel like their wages have been unlawfully withheld from them or not provided, allows them a way to negotiate, mediate that process and get their money back. They file complaints directly with the county. The county targets about a 90-day resolution timeline. And if the program were eliminated, these people would have to go through civil courts, federal processes. What we understood is that a lot of times these are for lower wage workers, your service workers, and a lot of times the attorneys that they would turn to wouldn't necessarily take the cases because the threshold for them making any money for these cases is so low, they might not take them on. So if eliminating the program, it would eliminate that accessible, efficient path to resolution, higher barriers to filing claims, longer timelines, and access to justice in cases that just wouldn't be pursued at all. So wrapping up and stepping back, looking at this slide, basically, these are locally authorized programs. You're balancing cost savings against access and timeliness and local control of services. And in many cases, the services won't disappear. They would shift to slower, less accessible external systems, except in the case of wage theft, which would not be provided. That's what I've got for you today, and we're happy to take questions.
Okay. Questions, Commissioner Flowers?
I have some questions, but first, just a couple of comments. Thank you very much for the time that you all took to communicate with our peer organizations, of course, outside of Pinellas County. I think some of us are aware of those organizations and have been communicating with them when it first came up that there was a question about the origin of the Office of Human Rights and its services. I also want to thank all of the Office for Human Rights staff. This has been very concerning for them because, like anyone else, when you're not sure if the department's going to be around or not, that brings about a lot of angst. However, all of them have stayed on board and have continued to do their jobs with the level of excellence that goes above and beyond. So I also want to publicly thank them and acknowledge them for that. I think the report speaks for itself. I did request that the Board of Trustees, any members that could possibly attend, if they could do so. We have here present with us today Dr. Ricardo Davis, who serves on the board. We have letters and comments that I believe everybody should have received through an email from Mike Twitty, who is at a conference, and from Kim Burke, both acknowledging the thoroughness of this review, but also acknowledging what it appears that the review states. And they fully support the continuation of the office for the services that they provide. We also have in the audience Councilmember Deborah Fix Sanders from the City of St. Petersburg, who I appointed as my appointment to the Disability Commission, and that committee talks about the things that may be potentially barriers for persons with disabilities and how to work to overcome that. As a matter of fact, I know last year we talked a lot about the mats that we provide so that persons who are in wheelchairs and whatnot can get down to the beaches. And so I want to thank her as well for her presence and for anyone that may be listening. I've always supported this office. I know one of the comments that was made that some preferred the change of name, which this didn't really address and shouldn't have. I just want to go on record for saying that some of the names that have been suggested just don't work, especially for the letter that we just received from Representative Bernie Jocks, asking for all of this information related to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and whether or not we have those names highlighted in our program or office titles. So the names that were suggested at our Board of Trustee meeting, I said then doesn't work, wasn't gonna work, because if the governor signed the bill opposing DEI or the inference of that, if he signed that, we certainly would be out of compliance. He signed it last week, so we cannot use any of the names that have been suggested. I guess what I want to say or would like to say is that the services that we provide help residents throughout Pinellas County, irrespective of who you are. If you are a resident of this county and you have an issue where you've not been paid fairly, this department handles that. If you are someone who's been challenged with housing, this is a department that can help with that, or that does help with that. If you are having some concerns related to disabilities, This is a department that can help with that and can help ferret out whether or not it is a justified claim that's being made or unjustified. I don't have a problem with seeking avenues by which we could maybe increase cost recovery. I think it's always a good thing to look at, you know, if we're providing this service for the entire county, can we get support from the other municipalities because we are providing a countywide service? So I don't have a problem with that. The only area I'm a little antsy about and would need to look legally with our attorneys is for the wage theft ordinance, because we are, on behalf of that employee, seeking recoupment for either not being paid for overtime or not being paid adequately for the hours worked, or being completely gypped on the payment for services for work that has already been performed. So I wouldn't want to charge the resident because we're trying to help them get something back that they're due from another entity. Whether or not we could place some type of penalty for payment from the employer, I don't know. That's why I said that's something we would have to look at legally to see what mechanisms could be in place to even do that. But I don't have a problem looking at that, because I believe if you do an honest day's work, you should get an honest day's pay for that work. And if you are an employer who's not doing that, then that's a bigger issue for me that we could take up in another vein. For the peer groups that you weren't able to get responses back for, you don't have to state them now. I would love to know who those were. We could talk about that later, because I just like to reach out. It could be, you know, everybody's busy right now because of all that's going on, both on the federal level and the state level. But I would like to know who they were and just, you know, follow up with the communication to see if there is something else that maybe we need to talk about or consider that they're going through that we aren't. So you can share that with me at another time or email that to me. I made a couple of notes, particularly in the area of FHAP, I'm going to say it like that, the Florida housing component piece. Just noting that even dissolving that program would not be at the complete discretion of the Board of County Commissions, because that does affect about 20% of the funding or service provisions that we have throughout the county. So it would be, I think it would be somewhat detrimental to even talk about disbanding that service. And even when you're talking about rolling some of these components into other departments, you still have to have funding that follows rolling that into other departments. So you're not saving money because you've got to have a body that does that work. And they have to be paid accordingly. And then we still have to go through the processes. Our current certification for FHAP goes through to 2029. So after that, you know, it's called what do you do? For the EEOC office, there's the closest, and I could be wrong, so please correct me. The closest EEOC office is over in Hillsborough County. Hillsborough County funds their EEOC office. I'm not quite sure that they're going to be willing to take on casework of Pinellas County residents when they don't receive funding from Pinellas County residents to provide that service. And just how far down the line would our residents be? And now we're asking our residents to traverse to a whole nother county to get help when they should be able to get that support and assistance from here locally. So I don't want to take up everybody's time on that. I made some other little notes, but overall, I'm pleased with the report. I'm grateful that when you all had questions, you asked for clarity so that you could provide clarity on that, because the constructs of this program are not singular. They have many tentacles that flow into a number of different areas. And even when I was appointed to that committee, I had to learn how all of it worked, how all of the machinations work. The last thing I'll say is you may have communicated with the constitutional officers, I'm not sure, but I did see the piece in here where it was perhaps charge them for the service. I don't know how that's gonna go over with our constitutionals. Of course, I could not communicate with them about this. That is something that, you know, they had a chance to read, and I'll make sure it's on our agenda for the next board meeting for discussion. But like everyone else, you know, we're all tightening our belts. And while they are constitutionals, they still provide services under the larger umbrella of Pinellas County government. So I'm not quite sure how that will be taken. But again, I want to thank you for the work that you did and the time. I want to thank you for, again, communicating with staff and getting a better understanding, and even drawing out how a percentage of their time is not necessarily geared to just one program. It's metered out over several different programs, which in my opinion would make it even more difficult if you talk about infusing these services into other departments within the county, because those pieces will still need to be metered out for time. So thank you, Mr. Chair, for allowing me to say that. I may have some additional comments as I hear from my colleagues, but just want to say again to each one of you as well, thank you for taking this up and having the conversation, the broader conversation. And for those of you that did meet with Bettina and or staff, thank you for doing that. Thank you for providing some little nuggets of refreshments to them. I got calls from staff. They were super excited, and they thought that that was very refreshing to provide that. So I want to thank you for that as well. I'm talking about Commissioner Peters. But for all of you that met with Bettina and staff and had questions and conversations, I want to thank you for that. Hopefully it broadened your knowledge base of just what all this office does.
Thank you, Commissioner Flowers. Any other thoughts around the table? Yeah, I'm not forcing it. I'm just asking while we're here. Commissioner Latvala.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I've said before, the Office of Human Rights performs, you know, activities that I think are important to our residents, and if that office did not do those, we would have to find somebody that did, because I certainly would not support getting rid of those services. And so that's first and foremost. And then the other thing that I wanted to add about the name change, you know, I'm kind of indifferent about that. If we change the name, that's fine. I don't really necessarily have any ideas to what we would change the name to. I would be open to suggestions.
Thank you. Commissioner Scheer?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Barry, I appreciate you, and I appreciate you bringing us the report in. I think it's very important that every once in a while we evaluate departments and see what they're doing and make sure that we need to fund them. And that's what my voters asked me to do, and so I'm glad that we've done this. And it was, you know, 6 months of evaluation. I appreciate it. When I originally looked at the department, I saw a lot of overlapping jurisdictions and expenses. I still do, but I'm not going to argue with Ken Burke and Mike Twitty. I don't know how I'm going to do that. But seriously, though, I do see, you know, the grant reporting and compliance, and I do not want to get rid of the wage theft. I talk to people about that. It's very important because we have a lot of small businesses out there. And so it does happen. So I do think that those two departments or those two services could be provided underneath Consumer Affairs in a different department under the Barry's administration. But if nobody has any interest in eliminating the duplicated efforts between the federal and the state and our Department of Human Rights, then that'll be that. So. But I'm glad we did the exercise because it's good to tell the people that put us in office that we're looking at everything we can to save them money on their tax bill. So, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Peters.
So I want to echo that. And thank you, Renee. You did a very thorough job about how wonderful they are and how important they are. But I want to thank Commissioner Scheer for the exercise because I learned stuff I didn't even know about I think they have an outstanding team. I know they were exhausted. I know it was a lot of work to do this, but I think it was a great exercise that really educated us on how value each and every person in that department is. And so, I just want to thank you for all your hard work, because we don't really hear the outcomes of their great work. And so we don't really get to celebrate those outcomes of their great work because we don't really get reports about it. And so, although it was exhausting and I'm sure challenging for you to do this exercise, the value is great. And I think at least my appreciation for you is much, much greater. And it just excites me that we have a team of people that are really looking out for our citizens, many of our most vulnerable citizens, and the timeliness on how you get your work done compared to if they would have gone to the state or the federal, government to do it. So I'm really proud of our team. I support you, and I am so grateful to you, and I applaud you for all the great work you do. And again, Commissioner Shearer, had you not presented this, it was really a great exercise. So thank you.
The department myself.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad I did.
And I've been here longer than you, so I should have known more. So, it was just
I second that.
Yeah.
Me too.
I learned so much, and I just should have known about it sooner, and so I just love that we did this.
Well, they do a lot of great work, and I learned that myself, so.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Nowicki.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. One quick question, the 5% that you're donating, do you have the nonprofits picked out locally?
I don't. I usually wait till everything's over and done with to figure out what the, my total cost is and get that net amount. And then, we go out, like we've done organizations like that collect money for cancer survivors that don't have a lot of money. We've done Horses with the Mission in some other counties that do work with disabled people and horses or people that have trauma and horses. So we try to pick something that's good for the community and something that matches what our mission is as an organization as well.
Awesome, yeah. I guess Local Government Solutions donates 5% of their contracts to local 501c3s in the area. So I just saw that and thought that was good. But back to Office of Human Rights, I appreciate all of the research and analysis. And one thing that I came across, is this office administers Chapter 70 of Pinellas County ordinances. And within that, I think there may be a subtle contradiction in our ordinances with federal law, where Pinellas County has gender identity absent of what you are biologically assigned or biologically born with is a protected class in Chapter 70 of Pinellas County Code Ordinance, but yet federal law, I don't think, protects gender identity anymore. So I don't know if there's a desire for this board to get in line with federal law, but I would like to see an alignment with federal law, so.
You all have the ability to exceed federal regulations, and I don't know the genesis of whether that may have been why we have the ordinance, but we can certainly review that if that is the will of the board.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea to review, but again, it's not making a decision. We're going to discuss that here. Yeah, I was, I kind of echo what Commissioner Peters said. I've been here a while, and a little embarrassed that I didn't know everything that goes on in the group. Patina was great. We had a great meeting. I really enjoyed that conversation, and it just kind of reaffirmed, the importance in general. You kind of got into the specifics again, and I think that's helpful. Miss Jessica Andujar last night talked about businesses getting more courage by doing something in downtown Clearwater. So it makes them feel energized and empowered to do their work. And so I think our residents need to have similar confidence that they have a group here that protects them. We have other groups that do the same, some other things, there might be some overlap, but I don't see a whole lot of that. And I think it helps our residents knowing that they have a champion, if you will, for effort. So I'm glad of the effort again, to echo the Commissioner Scheer for bringing it up. I think it's important that we do that. I do thank the department that I guess was a little concerned, if you will, about the process. Again, I think at the end of it, they can be re-energized, if you will, about we know more about it, and that's a good thing. We know the work that they do, and that's a good thing. I mean, it's all empowering. Doesn't mean that the process is not painful sometimes, that you have to experience with. But again, I think that's what we're supposed to be doing for our residents, is making sure that we're doing things well and using money well and all of that. So anyway, thank you for your staff's going along with everything and hanging in there. We have it's a good thing. So Barry, did you have a comment?
Yeah, just, we try to do reviews of departments every few years, and that is a very good thing. This one kind of falls outside of that because they're kind of a separate entity. And so we didn't do that type of review. But if you look in the report, there's several opportunities that we hadn't really thought of to tap into grant funding, charging administrative fees and things like that they provide for, like, over in Kelly's shop where it is a grant. Nobody ever wants to charge the administrative cost off to a grant because they want the grant to do that. But we make sure that we capture administrative costs. So there's areas that we'll dig into more coming into budget, and Chris Rose is going to make sure we capture all those costs. If we can modify our wage ordinance to where a business that was withholding wages and add a fee onto that, not to take from the resident, absolutely, because they're the ones that cause that. So there's opportunities here to provide efficiencies and to recapture some more funding within the office. So if nothing else, those are great opportunities that we're going to follow up on as a result of this discussion. So.
You made a comment about funding opportunities. These general fund is involved quite a bit here.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously. That's part of the millage part that goes to all residents in the county.
That's correct.
Okay. I mean, I was sitting there thinking that, gosh, the city should be doing that, but at the end of the day, what they do is they charge, and it would go right to the residents, and they'd be paying additional. Now, maybe, I don't know.
Well, there's different pieces. There's housing pieces, like St. Pete used to have a housing program. They formed that over to us. I mean, so there's some opportunities maybe for partnerships. We'd have to follow up on that to see if there's interest, but definitely in some of these areas around, ADA type things like that, and where we get grants, there's opportunities there.
I think I like that
So we'll
better.
dig into the report in detail, and we'll report back during the budget about what we were able to come up with.
Yeah, I like that better than hitting the cities again, and then they hit the residents again. So, that's not what we do.
Yeah, that would be difficult.
Yeah,
so.
yeah, that's not what I'm interested in either. Okay, commissioners, thank you for your thoughts. Commissioner Flowers, your extended comments were well received. Thank you very much for that, and all of you for going through the process. Good stuff. It's 12:10. They're supposed to have some food here.
Putting it out right now.
So we can jump into the our review of our meeting, our agenda, and then grab some bite to eat after that, after we've adjourned. So that's okay with everybody? That's what we're going to do now.
That's what we're going to do right now.
That's all we're going to do, because we're skipping the parcel. We're going to have that discussion on Tuesday.
It's a pretty short agenda, so I should be able to go through it pretty quick. So.
Okay, go ahead, Barry.
All right, item one. So we have a presentation on Emergency Medical Services Professional of the Year Awards, and then we have proclamation, and then we have recognizing Kathy Perkins as receiving the Chad Reed Emergency Manager of the Year Award. Yep. So we held off on that, but this was a good opportunity and well deserved. Going up to our public hearings, this is the CRA. You said you didn't have a problem with the Largo CRA. Just to put it within the activity center, this is not the funding piece. This is just recognizing that. Correct, Tom? Correct. This is for the Clearwater Largo CRA. Yeah. So this is just designating that as the activity getting and allowing them the density, doesn't address the funding issues that you addressed.
Number 5.
Correct. Well, both of them is aligning it into the activity center, gives them the countywide map amendment, doesn't address the funding piece. Item 11 is a ranking of firms. This, we went out for a third party for risk management services for workers' comp. So this is a bid that we received for that. And if you recall, a couple years ago, we do a joint bid. We outsource this, and I brought the sheriff in when we did that to provide more timely response on our workers' compensation. Item 12 is award of bid to Conan Graham for Madonna Boulevard Bridge, $14.2 million. Item 13 is the First Amendment. This is as you well know, this is for utility work on Whitney Road at Wolford intersection. So they have some additional unforeseen conflicts with the utility work, and so this is an increase due to that. Item 14 is a joint funding agreement with U.S. Geological Survey. This for, they construct data gathering systems throughout the county, monitors flood stages, rainfall, et cetera, and stuff. Item 15 is ranking of firms, 5 firms. This is for professional engineering services for utilities. The 5 firms are listed. They use them on an as-needed basis for their various capital projects. Onto the regular agenda, item 16 is a revised hazard mitigation grant application program with Florida Department of Emergency Management. These are for the traffic control cabinets to mitigate storm impacts. So revised grant funding for $9.5 million with a local match of $3 million. Item 17 is a resolution declaring one county parcel surplus on Dan's Lake up in Hillsborough County and authorizing a conveyance to Hillsborough County.
So why are we giving it away?
I knew you were going to ask that, and Jeremy's on his way up because I don't remember. I don't.
Good morning, Jeremy Wild, Director of Utilities. So this is a 1-acre parcel in Hillsborough County that's left over from the well fields that we used to operate up in North County. We had a well that was required through swift mud that we had to pump water out of the ground to augment wetlands. So when we were pumping our drinking water wells, we were dewatering wetlands in Hillsborough County, so swift mud required us to pump water just to hydrate wetlands. When we sold our production wells to Tampa Bay Water, we still maintained a permit to hydrate the wetlands. So there's a 1-acre parcel in Hillsborough County inside their well field ELAP area, their environmental lands area, that we still own the permit, the land, the maintenance costs, and now the taxes because we lost our tax battle with the Florida Supreme Court. So we're actually shedding cost by giving the property away to Hillsborough County.
Why not give it to Tampa Bay Water?
They didn't want it.
Okay.
Are you just giving them land, or are they accepting?
They are accepting the land, the well, and the permit conditions to hydrate the well.
Taking the assignment.
Yes.
Because that's the big thing, right?
And there's another parcel, very similar, also in Hillsborough County in the same area that Tampa Bay Water is taking. Their exact same conditions.
Right, and then we lose the tax burden.
It's a tax burden and the maintenance cost of the well and the pipes. So during the hurricanes, we actually had one of the pipes break, and we actually sent Pinellas County utilities crews into Hillsborough County and shut down the Hillsborough County right-of-way to fix our pipe in their county. It caused residential and other problems. So it's just cleaner to not own assets in someone else's county that we don't need.
They're looking at Pasco's, but parcels and stuff, but
yes, that's
decision yet.
Correct. We are not doing anything in Pasco County yet. We're still evaluating what's the right plan for that whole property.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Under item number 18, we're asking authority to file litigation in the referenced case. This would be against a contractor that damaged a water line, so we're seeking to recover those damages. It looks like the confidential memo is made it around the table that has staff's recommendation in a proposed settlement. And I'm currently not anticipating any county attorney reports.
County Administrator's report, we'll discuss. We're going to get all the information from last night. We're going to get that to you by tomorrow, and then we'll have a discussion regarding direction for the downtown campus on Tuesday at our County Administrator's report.
Yeah, and you had something else that you're bringing back on Tuesday too, that from our conversation today.
You were going to bring that up, I thought? You can?
No, I'll talk about that in a second. No,
Oh,
I'm just
okay.
about, it's about the care about me. There was something else that I thought you were.
No, just
just that? Okay.
Well,
All
we will do care about me, but I got to talk to Karen about a timeline
Yeah,
to
okay.
get that information.
Okay. All right. Real quick, again, we always thank our officers, Corporal Thornton, Deputy Winnick, and Deputy McSweeney. Thank you for being here, as usual. We had 6 of you here last night with that raucous group, which was, it's always better to be safe than sorry, but they were great. It was good to have them here, and they were all very respectful as we had a great chair for the meeting last night, that young whippersnapper. What's that?
Y'all were worrying about nothing. I knew my people.
So thank you for that. Also, I know Barry went around and talked to you each a little bit about the memorial naming on County Road 1. Thank you for listening to that. There was just some additional information that staff gave me. I needed to talk to a couple of the Gold Star mothers, including the one that is involved with her son. Felt very comfortable and confident with what I found out, but I wanted to make sure that you all were aware of it as well. So having said that, we will move forward.
Okay, on that, I'm sorry, I thought you were going to adjourn. I was like, don't adjourn.
No.
Okay,
I was
good.
going to, and having said that, we'll move on that on May 19th at the meeting.
Great.
Commissioner.
Thank you. So I wanted to bring up data centers, and I've got some thoughts on it. I would like to, I think data centers, they take up an enormous amount of water, enormous amount of energy, which typically gets passed on to the consumers. And I'd like to talk about maybe options, like maybe we could ban them, and I understand there's one that's considering on moving in. I have put in an inquiry to see if we have any small ones already. We'll be looking to Jewel to see if it's even possible, if we're allowed to ban them. But what Brevard County did this week, if we can't ban them, I'd like you to consider another option. And that would be to replicate what Pinellas County is doing. So they are, but Brevard has just passed this.
Replicate what.
Replicate here in Brevard's in Pinellas County. So what they're doing is they're not banning them, because there are currently 100 small ones in Florida. So they're not banning the I'd want to ban those big hyper ones for sure. But they are making sure that the county will ban any tax breaks through economic development for AI data centers or data centers. So they would no longer be allowed for tax, ad valorem tax exemptions. And I think that's a good policy. I think the amount of, right now we're in such a drought that we can't afford to be using water for cooling these data centers. I don't know enough about the small ones and how much water they're using on the small ones, but I certainly wouldn't want a giant one, these hyper ones that are coming in, to come in. They are not job producers. So they take up enormous amount of space, enormous amount of energy, enormous amount of water, and they're not job producers. And so I don't think that they should be getting any kind of tax benefits or abatements, since they're not real job producers. And so that's what Brevard County is. They're banning any ability for a data center to get tax exemption or abatement. And I think that at the very minimum, I would like to take the same action here and protect our constituents from having to have higher energy costs and that usage of water when water is so precious here right now. And often, this isn't the first time we've had severe drought. Tampa Bay Water does have plans for new water resources, but I think we need to do a better job at conservation, and an ordinance like this would then protect that water conservation and keep the affordability for the citizens down, because data centers are only going to make it less affordable based on electric bills and water usage. So I'd really like this commission to consider, and if Jules' team would be willing to take a look at their ordinance, or if you guys are interested in a ban, if by law we're allowed to, for consideration. So I'd love to have thoughts on that.
Commissioner Flowers?
Thank you for bringing this forward. I've been tracking the issues and concerns regarding the larger data centers in other states and how it is currently affecting not only their environment, but also documented health issues and concerns of persons that live in close proximity, even as far as 3 miles out, and increased numbers of various forms of cancers, increased issues and concerns with youth as it relates to some of their medical concerns, because we know that those growth years are really critical for our young people. I support, I would love to have a dialogue and discussion about it. Certainly, I support what you're saying as it relates to legally, do we have the ability to do any of this? At the very least, following another county's direction that thus far has not met with a legal challenge against what they're doing. We do have some smaller data centers, and of course, that's visible by the expansion of T-Mobile and some other technology companies that have those, which is how they're able to provide 5G and increase their internet speed and accessibility. But I'm glad you brought this forward, and I certainly support what your requests are as it relates to looking legally at how we can make it happen.
So we already have somebody interested in putting one on Gandy Boulevard.
Oh, my. And that is.
So I think it's something, if it's something that this commission is going to entertain, I think it's something we'd have to expedite.
Yeah, I support what you're saying and just wanted to throw
Thank
my
you.
2 cents in.
Well, when I visited the NACO, when I went to NACO, it was a major issue
Oh, yeah.
in Virginia, and they are sucking power, and they are depleting water sources. So I agree, we should try to add their type of use specifically to our land development ordinances, and see if
Are
we
you
can.
thinking about limiting it or banning it?
I think not allowing
Not
certain
allowing.
uses
Okay.
to deplete our sources, especially water. And for you all that are on Tampa Bay water, you need to be thinking about that too, because
Yeah.
they're going to be going out East Hillsborough, and that's the water we need here. And they use a lot of water. They really-
Barry did suggest that I bring this up at the tri-county.
Our regional.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think we want them here. They're going to just drive up our power costs, and they're going to eat up all our water.
Yeah, and I'd be interested in finding out like what we can do with those that are here already versus any that might be coming from now on.
We can certainly take a look. We're going to have greater control over the ones that may locate in unincorporated county, obviously. But Commissioner Peters warned me she was going to bring this up. I got some information from Tristan as to the bills that were, adopted during the legislature. So we just need to really take a look at the state law that's been come out recently and just some of the other landscape. The economic development tax break, I think, is something that we could probably easily bring back via ordinance. But we'll just want to take a look at the whole package, given some of the new laws and just the emerging issues.
On the federal level, they've kind of left it up to local governments, based on some of the other states that I've been tracking.
Well, federal said they want any of them must be 5 miles away from schools, and so they're recognizing the radiation. And so the federal is doing guidelines as far as distance, but I'd just like to not have them.
I agree. I'm on your side.
All right, well, we got 3.
Vala, did you have anything? I'm good. Okay. Barry? Did you have something? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, I thank you, Commissioner Peters, for bringing this up. I think, putting residents first over, going to suck up our resources. So we definitely got to protect them. So I'm supportive, so count me as a fourth, if you're doing math. But then I also think, which I've tried to preliminary start to look at, even taking it one step further. I think next session in Tallahassee, we're going to be preempted with a lot of things in terms of development. So I think if there's other ordinances that we can add on top of that to try to protect ourselves on other development that's going to be coming down the line, talking with our, county lobbyists and things like that, they think it's going to be a heavy preemption year next year. So we should look at other ordinances to protect ourselves, to preempt their preemption, to already have stuff on the books. So I don't know if we can turn it maybe into a broader conversation with a definite focus on that. I'm 100% supportive.
Yeah, unfortunately, state trumps local.
And
But we got Tristan, who's just doing great work, and so I agree with that. I think it's a great thing that we should do, but, and that's why it's so important to be active in fact.
we will absolutely look at it. Joel will do the legal research, but just a reminder, our land development code is preempted because of Senate Bill 180.
But-
So we'll look at the different
But
options.
we could make it effective the date that
Yes,
expires,
a year and a couple months from now. So,
right? So,
yes, we
because I'm
could.
going to bring you another one that's going to do the same thing.
So anyway, I just,
So-
but it highlights the importance of these preemptions. They put these things in place. It's driven, we know why it's driven. And then it ties our hands at a local government level to help our residents. And this is a great example where, we're going to look at it, but
Yeah, but I don't want to wait. I want to vote on it and
understand.
just put an effective date,
We'll-
right?
we're gonna
And-
bring you the
And the
research.
one I talked about last time, Barry, I'm going to come with you for that again, to do the exact same thing. And we can vote on it with an effective date when that expires, and that way it's done, and it's on the books when the date is done, and we don't have to bring it back. So that's what I would like to see happen here.
We would certainly want to take a look at that from a legal perspective and make sure adopting it prior to the date does not run afoul of the actual statute.
The effective date that might make it okay.
Okay. Anything else for the good of the order? Okay. There's some food over here if you want to grab some and eat or take or whatever. This meeting is adjourned. We'll see everybody on Tuesday.